Well, we will take you through all the twists and turns after we've taken you through all the twists and turns, because after a 4-week break, F1 is back.
The sun has set here in Bahrain. The floodlights illuminate this spectacular desert circuit. Here come the lights, the revs rise, and the 2023 Formula One World Championship season begins. And there's almost contact as the run down towards the first corner. Hamilton and Alonso wheel to wheel, and through he goes, and Stroll hits Alonso.
That was an incredible start. What bravery.
Coming out of 4, and they almost make contact, and Alonso is up into 3rd place in the Aston Martin.
41-year-old Alonso has still got all the racecraft in the world.
But it's Max Verstappen who takes the checkered flag. The second race of the Formula One World Championship getting underway. Perez on pole. What can Sergio Perez do? It's a reasonable start. Alonso's coming to the inside, and Alonso takes the lead of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
Yeah, but just come up on the screens. Incorrect starting location.
He's been given a 5-second time penalty, Alonso. And Sergio Perez wins from pole position in Saudi Arabia. It's another Red Bull 1-2 as we head to the next race in Australia.
Wicked. Nice job, guys. Fantastic, Checo.
Verstappen holds the lead. Lock up from Alonso. Oh, and sailing in. Alonso and Sainz collide. Perez is off the circuit as well. And there's a big crash at the back. The Alpine is in the wall. And that could be the end of the race, because I don't think we'll do another red flag.
My God, we're going to have to see a replay to unpick all of that.
Max Verstappen wins the Australian Grand Prix in bizarre circumstances.
Well, if that won't get you up for the first commentary of the day here on 5 Live, I don't know what will. The visceral sounds of Formula One. Great sport for radio. It's the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. Tyres melting up, drivers melting down. We have with us Formula E driver Sam Bird, our chief F1 writer Andrew Benson, and commentator Jack Nichols. Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon. Looking forward to this one.
That's the bit where you all say good afternoon. You see how it works?
Yeah. Come on.
I'm excited as well. Yeah, could be good fun, this one.
It's normally a crash fest, this one, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly.
Probably like Australia all over again.
Yeah, or like the opening to this broadcast.
Yeah. Maybe we should have practiced. We only had 10 minutes talking to each other before we went on.
Yeah.
Listen, we've had the sprint shootout for the first of 6 times this season. We've had the sprint race. Now, though, Jack, we just get the uncomplicated pleasure of a Grand Prix with a non-Red Bull driver on pole.
Yeah, first time this season that a Red Bull driver hasn't taken pole position. It's Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. He's been rapid here over the last few years. This is his 3rd pole position in a row in Baku. And can he hold off the Red Bulls for victory? Red Bull have to be favourite with Verstappen in 2nd and Perez in 3rd, but Leclerc and Ferrari will be doing all they can to try and hold him off. He's only got 6 points so far this season, Charles Leclerc. Verstappen leads the championship on 69, so he's a long, well, it's 75 now, isn't it, because he picked up points yesterday in the sprint. So he's a long way off in the championship, but we've still got 20 races to go.
We've had the upgrade packages, haven't we, Andrew? So what have we learned from that? Is Ferrari going to be able to repeat 1 lap pace over 51 laps?
Well, I don't think Charles Leclerc is going to be the one today. The car is quick over 1 lap, and he is blinding over 1 lap around Baku, but it's got what they call high tyre degradation in Formula One. It basically eats its tyres up more than the Red Bull, and also it's got a straight line speed deficit to the Red Bull, so I don't think it'll be a surprise for anybody if Verstappen and Perez come blasting past him in pretty short order, Steve.
Excellent. 5 minutes into the preview, we've already killed the race.
This is Benson for you. Like.
No, not at all. This is the scenario that we're in. But I suppose what we're trying to find, Sam, is reasons to expect the unexpected. Can you pick any?
The fact that this is a street circuit, and there is normally multiple safety cars at this race, and we've also seen red flags and then restarts at this race as well, and that can cause a little bit of a stir up in the order. I can't see anybody beating Max Verstappen for pace today, except potentially Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc's done a great job. He's put it on pole. He is blinding round here. I think looking ahead to somewhere like Monaco, that's where Ferrari could potentially cause a bit of a shake-up and try and win a race and not have a Red Bull winning. But here with a long straight, it's I think it's going to be going to a Red Bull car.
But that intra-team fight at Red Bull is interesting, because last year Max Verstappen had the measure of Sergio Perez, no doubt about that, and I think
he still does.
And I think yes, and I
very much so
agreed. And I think there's a sort of general consensus that Verstappen is a better driver than Sergio Perez, but Perez out-qualified and out-raced him yesterday in the sprint. He's 13 points behind him in the championship fight. He's very good at street circuits, Sergio Perez. So he'll be the man keen to try and stop Verstappen, and I think he's got a reasonable opportunity. It depends what happens at the start. It depends what happens with strategy over the course of the Grand Prix, but I don't think you can rule Perez out, Andrew.
Absolutely not. He knows that he's got to take advantage of this, Jack, because this is one of his good circuits. He knows over a season Verstappen might well have the edge on him on balance, but he's determined to try to win the championship this year, even if most people in Formula 1 don't think that's very likely. So it could get a bit tasty between the Red Bull drivers if Perez is in a position to challenge Verstappen. And let's not forget that there's a bit of bad blood sitting around in the background between those two after last year, when Verstappen thought Perez crashed deliberately in Monaco qualifying to hamper him, and they had a bit of a row about that later in the year. So it could get tasty up front.
And Perez's last 4 wins, I think, have come on street circuits, so he's a very, very impressive driver when it comes to street tracks.
What are the nuances, Sam, of being a great street circuit driver then?
I think just being able to have that confidence that you can play with the car close to these walls. When you go to like an Abu Dhabi and you've got infinite runoff, not anybody can be quick, but you can go over the limit and then come back to the limit and then be quick. On street circuits, you've either got to build up to it, or you're just comfortable and you can put the car millimeters away. And Sergio has since I was racing him in GP2 been very quick and quickly up to speed at places like Monaco, and then obviously with Formula 1 now, Azerbaijan and other places that they visit, Singapore. So he is a little bit of a street circuit specialist.
And in some ways, I suppose so is Leclerc. 3rd time in a row on pole here, born and raised in Monaco, so he knows his way around. He's been busy as well during his month break from the sport. Charles Leclerc released a single. It got as high as number 6 in the worldwide iTunes charts. It's with his piece called Oz 23, and here's a taste. And that's quite enough of that. I mean, it sort of sums up his season, to be fair, Andrew.
Yeah, it's not a surprise, Steve, is it, that he wrote that after Australia? That's why it's named Oz 23, because he had a terrible weekend in Australia, as he has for the season so far. Look, he's a fantastic driver. He's not as good a piano player or music or music writer as he is a Formula 1 driver, but he's better at both of those than I am, or any of those than I am. So who are we to comment on that?
Yeah, there was a racing driver called Adrian Sutil a few years ago who raced for Force India and Sauber and some others, and I think he was a full concert pianist, wasn't he? Wasn't he a phenomenal pianist?
There's been a few down the years. Elio De Angelis was a concert trained pianist. Gilles Villeneuve was a very good pianist, although he sort of lent more towards ragtime, so yeah.
Sam Bird tickles the ivories, or?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
I could do Mary Had a Little Lamb on the saxophone.
I mean, that was not an expected turn for this preview. The thing is, Jack, right, I feel like if you just heard that piece of music and were asked the question which F1 driver wrote this, you would say, well, it's Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, it does sort of sum up his last few years, doesn't it? And I think if you sort of played that with and intercut some, team radio of him going, "Oh, guys, I'm such an idiot," and all the things he said over the years, it would work quite nicely, because that's the sort of stuff he says on the radio, because he is very
self-critical.
Yeah, self-critical, isn't he? And takes a lot of responsibility for things, and that's come out in that particular piece.
Right, let's get to the heavy metal side of today's race. If you're wondering why Max Verstappen didn't fly past Leclerc in the sprint in the same way that Sergio Perez did, then there might be an easy answer. He got hit in the side of his car by George Russell on lap 1, but he stayed in the game. He finished 3rd. The obvious question, Sam, whose fault was it?
I don't think it was anybody's fault, really.
Okay.
Well, I actually think it's probably more Max's fault than George's. George did lock up, and therefore his front right tyre went into Max's side pod. But Max didn't need to be there. He's comfortably the quickest driver at the moment in Formula 1, comfortably got the quickest car. let George have the position there, then blast past him in a straight line and get after the next car, where he doesn't like giving up positions. He put his car in an awkward situation and picked up damage by doing so.
But it was Russell's fault that the contact happened, because he made the mistake and locked up and went in. Like, if there's someone to blame,
nobody else, but no other driver would attempt continuously going around the outside.
Yeah, because you know that there's a danger that the person on the inside is going to make a mistake and hit you. Do you know what I mean? And so it is still Russell's fault that the contact occurred. But ultimately...
Also, Verstappen had more room to give Russell on the outside, even if he did give Russell enough space.
But my point is this. We want to see these drivers racing wheel to wheel. Sometimes they're going to bump into each other, and that's fine. We don't have to lay blame to every single contact that occurs ever, even how tiny it is. And people have a difference. You should have done this, you could have done that, he could have done... Russell could have not made the mistake, Verstappen could have not been hanging around the outside. Sometimes you're going to have a little bit of contact.
It was...
I don't think we even would have mentioned it if Verstappen hadn't kicked off about it.
And there's no bad blood, so that's good.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say no one is playing the blame game at all. Everybody's very relaxed about it. Let's hear from George Russell and Max Verstappen, shall we? The Mercedes driver first.
I don't really know if it was a chat. It was I was quite surprised. I thought he was coming over to say good battle, to be honest. You know, from my side, I was on the inside. The position was already lost from him, and I was really quite surprised he was still trying to hold it on the outside. You know, ever since we're 8 years old in go-karting, if you're on the inside at the apex of a corner, it's your corner, and if you try and hold it on the outside, you're taking the risk. So. You know, I'm here to fight, I'm here to win. I'm not just going to wave him by because he's Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. And, nothing really more to say. I thought the move was on, and that's about it, really.
Just a bit unfortunate, of course, with the first lap. I mean, my start wasn't amazing, but, we're still in P3 going into turn 2. I thought I left enough space on the inside, otherwise, of course, the car is in the wall. And then suddenly I just get tapped just on the moment where you want to go on throttle. And then at the time, of course, I didn't know how much damage I had, but then I jumped out of the car and I saw the side pod had a hole in it, which is I think quite a critical area of the car. So it's not ideal, but I think at the end of the day, we still managed to be in P3, which I think was fine.
I couldn't really hear what you were saying to George. What did you say? Because he was saying that it was his corner because he had the apex.
Yeah, he's very good in explaining and create excuses. I mean, everyone had cold tires, and I think I had every right to be on the outside. I also didn't really risk anything too much. I gave him enough space, because I knew we were going side by side. But, you need two guys to work together, to make the corner. Clearly, he didn't.
That's a longer explanation of what Max Verstappen actually said that the cameras picked up just afterwards, where he called George Russell a word which I can't say on the radio, but it begins with a D. So I think that, people will be left in having to imagine very much about it. There was a moment, Jack, which really made me laugh. And anyone who's been involved in a very, very minor traffic incident, when Verstappen gets out of his car, looks at the side of it with a hole in it, just shrugs his shoulders, shakes his head, and then wanders over to remonstrate. I mean, he was properly fuming.
Yeah, he was really annoyed with Russell, and I do think that Russell is getting a tiny bit of not a major reputation, but a little bit of a reputation for having some collisions here and there. He hit Carlos Sainz at the start of the United States Grand Prix last year. There have been a couple of other sort of first lap incidents where he's had collisions and gone in a bit hot into sort of early corners. So I'm not saying that's a big reputation, but there's a little hint of that, and you can see why Verstappen was frustrated. But it's quite interesting to me, Sam, that Verstappen was so frustrated because he still finished third. He's miles ahead in the championship, but he wants to win everything, doesn't he?
Every time he gets on the track, he wants to be first, and if he's not, he's annoyed and he's angry. Even he could be 100 points in the lead of the championship, and if he comes third in a race, he'll be annoyed. He's relentless in his pursuit of trying to win every Grand Prix.
Are you the same to that level?
I need to win first. Well, and that hasn't happened, Jack, since what?
New York 2021.
Thanks for reminding me.
Sorry.
So I'll go back to rehab now. Thanks.
The thing is, Sam, that, all right, so Russell might be getting himself a reputation, but Verstappen's already got a reputation. I don't think anybody doubts that Verstappen would have tried to make a move in the same way that George Russell did. And, the way Verstappen acts, the way he talks, I do sometimes wonder if some of his own fans might roll their eyes, because you get to a stage where it must be exhausting, always rooting for the anti-hero.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
I mean, I enjoy the way Max Verstappen goes about his racing. I like the fact that he's so tenacious and will go for every single move when, quite frankly, he doesn't have to. But I think George had a point as well. Like, he's not just going to lay over just because it's Max Verstappen in a Red Bull trying to go around the outside. He's he has every right to be there. They're fighting. For me, in this certain situation, Max had more to lose. He didn't need to put his car on the outside of that corner, and he could have lived to fight another lap and overtake later, and probably without the damage would have gone on to finish second or potentially even win that sprint.
But that's boring. This is what I love about it, is that Verstappen goes for it and isn't giving in. Russell goes for it and isn't giving in. They have some contact.
That's great.
That's what we're here for. So the racing driver argument, which is entirely sensible from Sam Burden, it's what a lot of drivers do. Well, I'll just take the time and I'll just pass him easily on the next lap. You have drivers.
That's what we like. We like the entertainment of what Max is doing. Like it.
Remember when Valtteri Bottas was racing in the Mercedes? He wouldn't make an overtake if his life depended on it. Whereas
it's harsh.
Yeah, but I don't think it is. Whereas Verstappen and Russell, are two drivers absolutely going at it, and then they'll be annoyed at each other. That's fine.
We've been on, Andrew, for about 20 minutes, and we have mentioned George Russell, but only in the context of a story, not in the context of performance. We haven't mentioned Lewis Hamilton at all, which rather sums it up for Mercedes, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's fifth on the grid today, Hamilton, ahead of his old rival Fernando Alonso. And I think, Mercedes are in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment. They've realised they've made a mistake with this car. They've sort of beat themselves over the head about that for 2 or 3 races. They've got some developments coming in a couple of races' time. I think that's when their season starts, they hope.
Made pretty big personnel changes since the last Grand Prix.
Yeah, they brought back James Allison, who is very, very highly regarded technical leader in Formula 1 as a technical director. He'd moved sort of upstairs into a sort of overseeing management-y type role, and that's basically a bit of a admission that the previous structure with the technical director who'd replaced Allison wasn't really working. So we'll have to wait as the season progresses, Steve, to see whether they can deliver on what they believe they can deliver on, which is to make the car competitive again.
How much on this falls, Jack, on Toto Wolff? Because he's the team principal, and for people who don't listen and watch Formula 1 every single week, ultimately, I don't have to compare this to football, but if it was football, it would be the manager and the buck would stop there.
Yeah, it's not really something that happens that often in F1. You get some teams, like Williams actually sort of seem to go through team principals quite a lot, but you look at Red Bull, they've had amazing years, they've had poor years, but Christian Horner has been there since the very start as the team principal in 2005, I think, was the first year for Red Bull, and Horner was there as the team principal.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's wild, actually, now you think about it. But, it's not really a thing that changes. So I don't... And
don't forget, Jack, Toto Wolff is a 1/3 owner of the team, so it'd be hard for him to sack himself.
Well, that's true. That is very true also. And I think it's just not really a thing that kind of happens, is because, okay, you got the overall match. And if we just quickly do the football analogy, the team principal, I think, is almost a little more, arguably, a little more like director of football or chairman-y role in a way, because the manager in football is picking the tactics, picking the team. Okay, team principal is hiring the people below, but it's the technical directors that are building the cars. It's not the team principal. So I think it's a slight difference on that front. I think a team principal is probably closer to a chairman kind of figure than necessarily the head coach.
5 minutes until race time. The other team that we haven't spoken about, Andrew, who we talked about a lot all season long, is Aston Martin, who have been absolutely flying, but not this weekend necessarily.
That's right, they've got a few technical problems with their car. Their sort of rear wing DRS overtaking aid thing that you flip open on the straight to increase speed is malfunctioning, so there's a bit of nerves going in. So I think Fernando Alonso, who I mentioned earlier, thinks that this is kind of more of a damage limitation weekend for him, but it's been a great season for them so far, and it looks like it's going to carry on being that way. And of course, Steve, there's a bit of a interesting side story going on with Alonso at the moment, isn't there?
Is there? What's that, Andrew? I mean, you're the perfect person to ask this popular culture question.
Yes, thank you. Well, there is a rumour, as you know, Steve, that Fernando Alonso and Taylor Swift might be dating. We don't know whether it's true or not, but the internet's been having a lot of fun with it over the last few days.
I think it's a rumour that's kind of started on the internet and then got sort of picked up by Spanish outlets, and then everybody else has got on board with it, and Alonso's playing along with it like you've never seen, and it's all escalated. I mean, all I can say is if Taylor Swift ends up dating Alonso, the next album is going to be a banger, because considering all of the sort of, a reasonable amount of her work is based on her previous relationships, although that sort of changed with the Folklore Evermore stuff, but I can't imagine a breakup with Alonso is going to be nice. I think there's going to be a lot of good content if that were to happen.
Right,
ever getting back together.
There you go.
Last thing, Sam, before we get underway with the race. Looking at this circuit, will we see overtaking? Will we see drama over the course of the next hour and a half?
I do hope so, and I think we will. I think that obviously with the aid of DRS down the main straight, we will see lots of passing there. Also into 2 and 3 we're going to see some passing. I think that there's potential for safety cars, potentially even red flags at this circuit. So yeah, watch this space, it's going to be great.
Really looking forward to this. So don't forget, later on this afternoon, we've got Premier League commentaries. Fulham, Manchester City at 2 on 5 Live. Manchester United, Aston Villa on 5 Sports Extra. Bournemouth versus Leeds and Newcastle, Southampton, both 2 o'clock kickoffs. You can listen to that via the BBC Sport website. And then Liverpool Spurs in full at 4:30, with a big game down at the bottom of the Championship with the Old Firm derby in the Scottish Cup semi-final. Big game in the Women's Super League, Manchester City against Reading. Champions Cup semi-final rugby, and the final of the World Snooker Championship. Jam-packed day of sport, but it starts with the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Formula E driver Sam Bird, Chief F1 writer Andrew Benson are with our commentator Jack Nicholls.
Thank you very much, Steve. So the 4th round of this 2023 Formula One World Championship season about to get underway in Azerbaijan, Baku, on the shores of the Caspian Sea. A spectacular fast street circuit with the long start-finish straight. The cars will be getting up to 210 miles an hour with the shore on their right-hand side before hitting the brakes and turning 90 degrees left into the back streets of the old ancient city of Baku. And at the pole position, it is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. For the first time this season, not a Red Bull on pole position. But Verstappen is second and Perez is third. Verstappen leads Perez in the championship by 13 points, but we've still got 20 more races to come over the course of the season. The formation lap is about to get underway. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari will burn out his tyres to get a bit of smoke and get a bit of heat into them as he then makes his way around on the formation lap. 18 cars taking the start on the grid, 2 cars starting from the pit lane, Esteban Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg. Leclerc pulls away on the formation lap. He is on pole. Verstappen is second. Sergio Perez is third. Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari is in 4th spot, with Lewis Hamilton in 5th in the Mercedes. Fernando Alonso is 6th in the Aston Martin. The McLaren of Lando Norris is 7th, with Yuki Tsunoda's AlphaTauri in 8th. 9th is Lance Stroll, and 10th is Australian Oscar Piastri. George Russell had a difficult qualifying session, so he's down in 11th place. I doubt he will be tangling with Max Verstappen on the opening lap of this Grand Prix. 12th is Alex Albon. 13th is Bottas. 14th is Logan Sargent. 15th will be Zhou Guanyu. Magnussen, Gasly and De Vries, the 18 drivers that will line up on the grid. As I say, Ocon and Hülkenberg in the pit lane. Expecting a one-stop strategy. Everybody bar De Vries, Ocon and Hülkenberg, the 3 drivers at the back, are starting on the medium compound of tyre, and so we don't have any strategy divergence up at the front. It's going to be a pure race here, Sam Bird.
It is going to be a pure race. We kind of got a big glimpse, didn't we, yesterday, of what tyre life we can expect on the mediums. We saw that the Ferrari started to struggle after about 13-14 push laps on those mediums. Pirelli are predicting a tyre window of about 17 laps if you're doing the one-stop going from mediums to hards, and then the rest of the race on the hard compound. I think Ferrari are going to struggle to get to that 17-lap mark.
Yeah, they certainly did yesterday, starting on the medium tyres. Max Verstappen won this Grand Prix last season. The year before, it was won by Sergio Perez. So Red Bull have won the last 2 races in Baku. And
was that the race where Verstappen was leading comfortably and then had the tyre blowout? Yeah,
he did, and that allowed Perez and Hamilton to fight it out for the victory. We've seen Ferraris running at the front in the past. Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton coming together behind the safety car one year in 2017. And now the cars are coming around the final corner. We'll keep you up to date with, we've got plenty of football commentary to come later on today. All of the 2 o'clock kickoffs: Fulham, Man City, Man United versus Aston Villa. Big one at the bottom: Bournemouth versus Leeds, and Newcastle versus Southampton. And then at 4:30 this afternoon, it's Liverpool versus Tottenham. And we'll keep you up to date with all of that. We'll bring you the team news for those 2 o'clock kickoffs in about an hour or so's time. But now the focus is on the capital city of Azerbaijan, Baku, as on a very slow formation lap here, Charles Leclerc is pulling his way towards the front of the grid. Verstappen in second, Perez in third. How aggressive does Perez need to be at the start of this race? Is his focus to try and get ahead of Verstappen if he wants to finish ahead of him in the Grand Prix?
I think so. I think if he's to pass Verstappen, it needs to be at the beginning and then get Leclerc in between the two of them. That's got to be the aim, and try and pull away a little bit. But having said that, if there's a safety car, I can't see anybody bar Max Verstappen winning this right now. It's really difficult for me, bar an anomaly. I can't see it happening.
Well, Leclerc in the Ferrari is the driver who is lining up on pole position for the 3rd year in a row in Azerbaijan, and for the 2nd day in a row as well, having started on pole yesterday for the sprint race, ended up finishing that one in 2nd spot. But now he is lined up at the front. 51 laps coming up. An hour and a half or so of racing for the 4th round of the World Championship season. Max Verstappen is angled fairly dramatically over to the right-hand side of the circuit where Charles Leclerc is sitting. Verstappen will try and get across and onto the racing line as quickly as possible. Here come the lights. When they go out, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix will be underway. Leclerc on pole, Verstappen alongside him. Race begins now, and it's a pretty good start from Verstappen on the run down towards the first corner. Perez tucks into the slipstream, but Leclerc holds the lead. Bit of a lock-up from Fernando Alonso further back. Hamilton gets a bit loose, and that could allow Alonso the opportunity to try and attack down into turn 2. He covers it off. Race order is as it was. Charles Leclerc has managed to hold the lead. Verstappen is in second. There's contact right at the back. I think everybody has managed to keep going. One of the Alfa Romeos was involved in it, but Leclerc leads. Second is Verstappen. Third is Perez. Fourth is Carlos Sainz. Fifth is Hamilton. Sixth is Alonso. Over to seventh, it's gone Lance Stroll. Great start from the Canadian. He's gained 2 places. He's got ahead of Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda. In fact, Russell has got ahead of Tsunoda as well. So Tsunoda has dropped down to 10th position, having started in 8th spot. But a good start from Charles Leclerc. He's held the lead. Verstappen is in second though, and Perez is in third. Sam Bird.
Yeah, great start by Charles Leclerc, doing exactly what he needed to. Very reminiscent of yesterday, actually, pulling a little gap to the Red Bulls on lap 1. Yellow flag, sector 1 though, Jack.
Yeah, so it could be that one of those cars that was involved in the collision has picked up a bit of damage. Verstappen is very, very close to the back of Charles Leclerc, though, as they come down towards turn 15, onto the brakes, into the downhill 90-degree left-hander that sends them back downhill towards the Caspian Sea. Track is clear, so the race carries on, but Verstappen is very, very close here to the back of Leclerc as they come towards the end of lap 1. About 2 minutes a lap, well, about 1 minute 50 seconds a lap, and Verstappen might be close enough to catch the back of Charles Leclerc on this run towards the first corner. He's up to 200 miles an hour, sitting in the slipstream of the Ferrari, closing in. Leclerc is holding the middle of the road, but Verstappen is right behind him. He's not going to be quite close enough this time around. No DRS yet. That starts on the 3rd lap of the Grand Prix, but Leclerc is under big pressure already. Only 0.3 of a second between them as they end the first lap. Leclerc leading, Verstappen second, Perez third, Sainz fourth, Hamilton fifth, Alonso, Stroll, Norris, Russell and Tsunoda the top 10. Outside the top 10, which are the point-scoring positions. It's Piastri, Albon, Magnussen, Sargent, Gasly, Joe, De Vries, Bottas, Ocon and Hülkenberg.
How does Charles Leclerc play this, though? That's the difficult thing, I think, for him. He knows he doesn't have the pace to beat the Red Bulls today. Does he try and hold this out in the lead as long as possible, or does he say, do you know what, Max, there's the lead, I'm now going to sit behind you and use your toe. I'm just going to try and keep at your pace by using the DRS effect and try and hang on to the Red Bulls in that respect.
Andrew Benson.
Sam, I don't think he's got any choice. Even if it doesn't happen this lap without DRS, it's going to happen on the next lap with DRS. The Red Bulls got such an advantage on the straight. Leclerc's not going to be able to hold him off. I think what we'll see him try and do once Verstappen is ahead, which is going to happen pretty soon, is do what he did in the sprint yesterday. Try to use the slipstream to hold on to that second place for as long as he possibly can. You get quite a significant lap time advantage by having the DRS behind another car. He'll want to take advantage of that for as long as he can and hold Perez back, hopefully. But of course, Perez is going to want to use his DRS to try and get past Leclerc and attack Verstappen. So that's where I think the interesting aspect of the race is going to be.
Verstappen struggled a little through turn 16. He was really close coming down into the final turn, but just dropped away a little bit. Across the line they come again to complete lap 2, just half a second between them. Verstappen closing, but still not got the use of the drag reduction system, the DRS on the rear wing, the little letterbox that pops open, but he will have this time around. Leclerc under big pressure up at the front. He's half a second ahead of Verstappen. Now Perez is 1.3 seconds back from Max Verstappen at the line, and then it's he's 1.4 seconds back from Leclerc, I should say. So the top 3 still covered by a second and a half, and Verstappen is already darting to the inside coming into turn 3, not quite close enough. The Scala Ferrari still out in front. Then it's Carlos Sainz who's dropping back a little from Sergio Perez, and then it's Hamilton running in 5th spot, and Alonso is in 6th position. In fact, Alonso is right behind Lewis Hamilton as they come now through the tight, twisty middle sector. Alonso, who had a bit of a lock-up at the first corner.
Talking about Carlos Sainz, he's really been shown a clean pair of heels by Charles Leclerc this season, and this race is no exception. He's really not at the same level right now as his teammate Charles Leclerc.
He's finding out what happened towards the back of the pack. Kevin Magnussen was getting onto the brakes into the third corner, and up ahead of him they were 3 wide, and there was contact between, I think, the Williams of Albon getting into the side of Oscar Piastri, and Albon's got a bit of front wing damage now, and Piastri got turned around a little, so Albon might be struggling for pace potentially after picking up that little bit of damage, and everybody else had to shuffle back. But here comes the attack from Verstappen for the lead. We're about to come through to start lap 4 of 51, and Verstappen is right in the slipstream of the Ferrari. He's going to get the DRS this time around as well. Half a second between them. Now the rear wing pops open and the Red Bull closes in. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari on the run down towards the 90-degree left-hander at turn 1. Doesn't fight it. Verstappen goes to the inside and is through. Championship leader, 2-time reigning champion Max Verstappen into the lead of the Grand Prix in Azerbaijan. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari down to 2nd, Sergio Perez in 3rd.
Straight line speed difference, 308 kilometers an hour for the Ferrari without DRS, 342 kilometers an hour for the DRS assisted Red Bull. Like taking candy from a baby.
Indeed. Lap 4 of 51, sorry. Max Verstappen is leading the race now in the Red Bull, 0.7 of a second ahead of Charles Leclerc, and then it's Carlos Sainz Sergio Perez in 3rd place. How quickly can he get ahead of Charles Leclerc? That's going to be the thing, because if Leclerc can stay within DRS range of Verstappen, then that will help him defend from Perez down the straight, but it's whether Leclerc can stay close enough to the Red Bull out in front.
It will help him, but I think such is the advantage of the Red Bull when it opens its DRS. That package is so strong that I'm saying that it's going to happen this lap or the next lap.
I agree. I think the DRS advantage of the Red Bull, even with the Ferrari with its DRS open, should be enough for Perez to be able to get past Jack.
Down the hill towards turn 16. Max Verstappen leading the way. Sergio Perez, the Mexican, in 3rd place, chasing the Monegasque Charles Leclerc in 2nd spot. Perez is 2nd in the championship at the moment, 13 points behind Max Verstappen, so he will want to finish 2nd to Verstappen in this Grand Prix, but even if he does, that'll extend the lead up to 20 points at the top of the championship. Here comes the attack now from Sergio Perez. He's closing in on the Ferrari, coming down towards the first corner. Leclerc covers the middle of the road, and Perez isn't quite close enough to make the move this time through. Lap 5 of 51. Perez not quite able to do it. Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race on that last tour. They've got 2 seconds back to Carlos Sainz, who's in 4th position, and actually being put under quite a lot of pressure from Lewis Hamilton for that 4th place. Alonso's in there as well, as is the other Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. But Perez is on the attack here in 3rd position.
You could see on the feed that we have the speed advantage of the Red Bull, both obviously in DRS. Charles Leclerc on the DRS behind Max Verstappen, the leader, and Sergio Perez just cruising up to the back of him. A good 10-15 km/h advantage for the Red Bull. Interestingly, out of turn 1, saw Lewis Hamilton running over a stray plastic bottle on the circuit. Don't know whether that will cause any issues, but yeah, not ideal for him.
Lap 5 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. All the football coming up later on this afternoon as well. The sound you can hear is Sergio Perez's Red Bull coming into a left-hander of turn 15, running down the hill into the final corner of turn 16, and then starting the blast along the shores of the Caspian Sea back towards the start line. And Leclerc, I think, is not going to have DRS this time, so Perez is going to be quite close to the back of the Ferrari in the fight for 2nd position. Verstappen is leading, and yet Leclerc's not going to get the DRS here. Sergio Perez will. How hard will the Ferrari try and fight off the Red Bull for this 2nd spot? Perez goes to the inside into turn 1 and squeezes Leclerc a little towards the outside, and as a result is able to make the move. Sergio Perez up into 2nd place, a Red Bull 1-2. Max Verstappen leading. Perez is in 2nd now. 3rd and 4th of the 2 Ferraris. Charles Leclerc, who started on pole. He started on pole for the last 3 Grand Prix here now, but has yet to win it. And now he's dropped down to 3rd by lap 6. Behind him is Carlos Sainz, who still is under big pressure from Lewis Hamilton in 5th position. Then Alonso and Stroll in 6th and 7th. But a straightforward move for Perez, who squeezed Leclerc a little bit into the braking zone.
Leclerc was on the clean racing side, so just he wanted to make sure that Leclerc didn't try anything around the outside or outbrake him again. So I think that was clean, fair racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Clean and fair from Sergio Perez to get him into 2nd spot. So now we will see that when they're in clear air what Perez's pace can be like in the Red Bull. Here's Lance Stroll's radio. He's in 7th.
Fernando, I will not attack. We are both playing the same game.
Copy that.
What a nice teammate move that is. Lance Stroll telling the team to tell Fernando Alonso, his teammate in 6th place, I will not attack. We're playing the long game.
It's very grown up as well, because I think Lance Stroll knows he's not as quick as Fernando Alonso, so even if he did try and get past him, he's only going to be holding him up as the Grand Prix develops, so he might as well stay in behind him and learn a bit.
I was honestly sort of expecting that radio message to be, I'm faster, we should swap positions, you know, but fair play to Stroll there.
Absolutely. Alonso radio.
So I can confirm, Fernando, that Lance will not attack you. Lance will not attack you. He's doing the same as you.
I mean, he can have a go. I think Hamilton is opening the graining, but it's just a matter of time we overtake them.
Yeah, copy, mate, copy.
Well, Alonso, what a nice relationship. Alonso's like, well, he can have a go if he wants. But so they're saying Hamilton's opening the graining. Well, that's what Alonso said. Graining on these tyres then, and that means that they're going to be quite confident. Well, they seem quite confident of getting ahead of Mercedes. Graining, tell me.
He saw as an Alfa Romeo comes into the pits for a new set of hard compound tyres on Valtteri Bottas. Decent stop from the Alfa Romeo boys, but very early.
Yeah.
Very, very early stop. We saw Fernando Alonso do the same thing in Bahrain, actually. Just sit behind Lewis Hamilton, sit there, let Lewis use up his tyres and then attack. And he's going for the same sort of philosophy today.
Graining is when you get little balls of rubber coming up on the tyre.
Graining is where the tyre is basically skating across the surface, and then moves the rubber and creates like a small little ripple wave effect on the surface. So you're not actually digging into the surface of the tyre, you're kind of running along these tiny little grooves that appear then on the top of the tyre, giving you less grip.
You see it a lot with Fernando Alonso, actually, Jack. You do get an advantage being in the DRS zone in terms of lap time. It can be as much as sort of 6-7 tenths a lap. But of course, being that close to another car, you can overwork your tyres if you're not careful. So what Alonso often does in races, you see him drop back to around about 2 seconds, maybe 2.5 seconds, and you think, oh, has he lost pace? Is he dropping back? Is he not quite as quick as the car in front? And then as the pit stops get close, he'll move up and up and up and get back onto the back of that car and start to pressure them. And as you say, it happened in Bahrain, and I'm sure it'll happen again, and it may be happening here.
He's 1.5 seconds back from Hamilton at the moment. Into the pits has come Alex Albon in the Williams. We'll see whether they change his front wing, because he did pick up, I'm pretty sure, some damage on the front right. The end plate is missing, so we'll see whether they change that, the Williams crew. In he comes, Alex Albon, who qualified well for the sprint, finished 9th in that race yesterday, and no front wing change for Alex Albon as he heads back out onto the circuit. Let's head to the Cardiff City Stadium. Cardiff versus Huddersfield Town at the bottom of the championship. Laura Kenyon.
Still 0-0. First real chance went to Huddersfield, though. Danny Ward's strike forcing a decent save from Jack Alnwick in the Cardiff goal. A statement of intent, fighting for survival, but even match-up so far. Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 0.
That was a 12 o'clock kickoff, and as Laura said, Huddersfield very much fighting for survival in the championship. Lap 8 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is leading 1.1 seconds only ahead of Sergio Perez. Then it's 2 seconds back to Charles Leclerc in third. Myself, Jack Nicholls, the Formula E driver Sam Bird, and the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson with you.
Jack, I think that we're seeing quite a lot of tyre saving at the moment. The Red Bulls are not stretching away as you might expect them to. The gaps in the field have not opened up. It's only like a second between most of the cars as you go right down through the top 10 and beyond. So I think what we're seeing is a sort of waiting game from everybody at the moment, trying to extend this first stint. Maybe there's a safety car coming up. They can benefit from stopping under that. We're in a bit of a holding pattern right now.
But I think it's going to be difficult for everybody to get to roughly lap 17, 18 on these medium compound tyres. It was difficult yesterday, and they had a 4-5 lap safety car. Also, the track temp today is about 6-7 degrees hotter than what we had in the sprint race yesterday. Those kind of temperatures make it even harder for the drivers to look after the tyres.
Lap 9 of 51. Across the line comes Max Verstappen, down towards the first corner. A few other cars diving into the pits. Yuki Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Logan Sargent all pitting. And here comes the attack from Alonso. He's right behind Lewis Hamilton in their fight over 5th position. Fernando Alonso has finished 3rd in the first 3 races of the season. He's currently running 6th. The Spaniard.
His ability to see a race unfolding. How cool and calm was that 2 laps ago? It's okay. I can see that he's grading his tyres. I'm just going to sit here. I'll attack him when the tyres are gone. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing a super smart, intelligent racing driver, still at 41 years old, at the top of his game.
Mercedes are waiting in the pit lane, potentially for Hamilton, if Alonso has spotted that actually the pace has dropped off now for Hamilton. He did a 47.9 on that last lap, Hamilton, which is not terrible compared to his personal best, but it was a second slower than Fernando Alonso. Here they come, down into turn 15, then dropping down into the next left-hander at turn 16 on these Baku city streets. George Russell, meanwhile, is in 9th spot. He's kind of stuck up behind Lando Norris, so maybe this could be for George Russell as they try and get him some clear air, but we'll find out now because Hamilton is coming out of the final corner and he will be coming in this time. So Lewis Hamilton into the pits from 5th position, and that releases Fernando Alonso into 5th and Lance Stroll into 6th. Hamilton's being followed in by Lando Norris as well, and I think Yuki Tsunoda's already pitted, so I think it's Kevin Magnussen that's coming in, and into the pits comes Hamilton then from 5th position. Off go the medium tyres, off goes the new set of hard tyres, and he makes his way out of the pit lane now. Very neat stop from the Mercedes team, 2.6 seconds, but he's going to come out in a right old ding-dong battle here in the back of the pack, and that's very, very concerning for Lewis Hamilton. He's come out behind a whole queue of cars, which is Joe, De Vries, Ocon and Hulkenberg, all of whom started on the hard tyre, all of whom are going to be well slow. And that's really bad news for Hamilton.
Strategy-wise, that's so difficult for him now. Yellow flag, sector 1. I wonder what's happened. Hamilton going through sector 1 now, so it's not Hamilton. Who's slowed in sector 1, Jack?
The track's clear now.
Track
so
clear, okay.
Could have been Magnussen. Someone's gone off at turn 3, basically.
But for his strategy now,
Magnussen.
the next 2 or 3 laps are going to be extremely difficult.
Baseline is...
Yeah, but I'm sliding.
Understood.
So Verstappen getting a bit frustrated, and right behind him now is Sergio Perez, just 0.7 of a second between them. The two Red Bulls are running first and second. Nick de Vries is off. A driver who needed a strong weekend is not having one. He's locked up, and he's trying to find reverse gear, which is quite difficult to do in Formula One cars. Into the pits is coming Verstappen from the lead of the Grand Prix now. Lap 10 of 51. Verstappen pits. Sergio Perez will take the lead of the race and was looking quicker than Verstappen, you have to say, at the moment. I know Andrew was saying that they were tyre saving, and maybe they were, but Perez was there.
He was there. He is good at looking after his tyres, is Perez. The interesting thing now is, does Verstappen hit a little bit of traffic? If he does, Perez has basically then got clean air now to punch in a couple of good laps, and then can he do... you stay out and get track position by staying out. Safety car
deployed now. How will this work for Sergio Perez? Is this going to give him the lead of the Grand Prix? Because Max Verstappen has just pitted for a new set of tyres. He's come out down in 7th place, and he's the first of the runners to have pitted. But Sergio Perez, he will lose less time, because normally the cars are going 200 miles an hour down that straight while you're in the pits. Behind the safety car, they'll be doing less, so this could give Perez the lead of the race here, and it could promote the Ferraris ahead of Verstappen as well.
I tell you what as well, Jack, if that happens, Max Verstappen is not going to be a happy bunny, and I think we're going to hear some quite cross radio messages asking for all sorts of things to happen at Red Bull.
The safety car is out because of because of that Nick de Vries incident. He's not in the barriers, but he just can't find reverse gear. And I've never quite...
I don't think that was the case, Jack.
Oh.
If you looked at the front left, it was at a very strange angle.
Ah, OK. So let's see how this unfolds, because Perez is coming now behind the safety car. He will be coming into the pits. Ferrari are not quite getting ready to go. Red Bull are poised. Alonso's going to pit as well. Verstappen might come out here in potentially 7th place. He might actually... How far away is he from Russell, Max Verstappen? He's quite close to Russell, so it might be close with the Aston Martins and the Mercedes, but Perez is going to lead this Grand Prix through a twist of fate with the safety car deployment. Into the pits he comes now. Well, very slowly, because you have to go slowly behind the safety car. Now Ferrari come running out into the pit lane, so big, unpredictable drama as ever in Azerbaijan. Into the pits now comes Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, is only just coming out of the final corner, so I think Perez is going to get him. Into the pit lane he comes. The Ferrari's coming in as well, as Max Verstappen will be going so frustratingly slowly. Oh, big lockup from Leclerc as Perez came in. The Ferraris might not make it. It's going to be really tight. Verstappen is coming down the start-finish straight now. I think Leclerc, so tight. They're coming to pit lane exit. The safety car is waiting to pick up Charles Leclerc. It's side by side further back between one of the Mercedes, that was Russell, and an Aston Martin, I think, coming in. Don't know how that happened, but now Verstappen comes through the left-hander, and is he behind Charles Leclerc? I think he is. It's Perez in the lead of the race. Leclerc is second, and Max Verstappen is in 3rd position now after that poorly timed, from his point of view, safety car intervention. If he wants to win this Grand Prix, Verstappen, he's got to overtake Leclerc, which we've seen he can do, but he's also got to overtake his championship rival and teammate Sergio Perez at Red Bull.
And tough one for some of those drivers. The other guy that really missed out with that safety car is Lewis Hamilton. Remember, these are some of the best engineers and strategists in the world, but they don't have a crystal ball, Jack. So, I mean, they've predicted that was the right lap to come in, which is why Lewis and why Max obviously pitted. They're not to predict that Nick de Vries is going to have an accident, and that can effectively really destroy and hamper their races. Lewis Hamilton now is down in 10th place.
Yeah, he was running in 5th before the pit stop, and that's what Andrew Benson mentioned it earlier on, the BBC Chief F1 writer, that they're going around and they're sort of consolidating their position and trying to extend this stint as long as possible in case there's a safety car. Because if you pit early and then there's a safety car, you get scuppered, which is exactly what's happened to Hamilton and exactly what's happened to Verstappen. And to be fair, I think Verstappen, I don't think he wanted to pit that early. Like, I don't think the ideal would have been to pit when he pitted.
No, he wouldn't have done.
He seemed to be struggling a bit.
But Perez was putting a bit of pressure on him.
So we're just about to get a replay of what happened to Nick de Vries. Coming through, he's clipped the left front on the inside, coming through the left-hander of turn 5, clipped the inside wall, and that's broken the front left suspension, and he is out of the Grand Prix.
I'm surprised that he's made that mistake. So, in Formula E, Nick de Vries radio.
No, my left wheel is broken, mate.
So, in the series that he did before, Formula E, all the walls at apexes are quite jagged. Now, in Formula 1, a lot of them are smooth and rounded off on street circuits. That one isn't. So I'm surprised he's made that mistake, knowing that he's raced in Formula E for quite a few years.
Yeah, won the World Championship there a couple of years ago. Interesting move from Russell. He kind of overtook Lance Stroll coming into the pit lane. We saw Sebastian Vettel do that a few years ago. And the other slight question is, was that an unsafe release for Sergio Perez? It was a very, very tight one with the Ferrari crew. Leclerc had to slam on the brakes. That's a real tight one for Sergio Perez in terms of an unsafe release. So
I think he'll be all right, Jack. I think he'll be okay.
Okay. So, race order behind the safety car here on 5 Live in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Everybody's made their pit stop now. It's Sergio Perez in the lead, Charles Leclerc in second, Max Verstappen down to third, Carlos Sainz is fourth, Fernando Alonso is fifth, Russell, Stroll, Ocon, Hülkenberg and Hamilton are the top 10. Ocon and Hülkenberg haven't pitted, actually. Then Lando Norris is in 11th, Tsunoda, Piastri, Zhou and Albon the top 15. Gasly, Magnussen, Sargent, Bottas, the 19 drivers still running. Nick de Vries has crashed out of the Grand Prix. From 2 o'clock this afternoon, we'll have coverage of all of the Premier League matches. Fulham versus Man City is where John Murray will be based from 2 o'clock, but we'll also have coverage of Man United versus Aston Villa, big one at the bottom, Bournemouth versus Leeds and Newcastle versus Southampton, and then 4:30 this afternoon, Liverpool versus Tottenham. It's still 0-0 at the Cardiff City Stadium between Cardiff and Huddersfield, and we will be with you for the next probably hour or so. The safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap. Andrew Benson.
This race just got really interesting, Jack. We've now got Verstappen back in third place. He's got to pass Leclerc. That's going to happen within a couple of laps. If it doesn't happen before DRS, it'll happen with DRS like we saw at the beginning of the race. But then what? Perez is looking really quick. Verstappen will not want to lose to Perez 2 days in a row. Remember, Perez won the sprint race yesterday, and there's a championship battle at stake. If Perez wins this race, he's only a handful of points behind Verstappen in the championship. If Verstappen wins it, he's 20 points ahead or something like that. There'll be no quarter given, I don't think, and I think it's going to get really tense at Red Bull.
And Sam, safety car restarts in Baku are pretty wild.
They are indeed very wild. If Charles Leclerc has any opportunity to lead another lap in this Grand Prix, now is the time.
So it's a long straight down towards the first corner, so the cars don't want to go too early and get slipstreamed basically by the car behind, which will allow them to overtake. So Perez will be leaving it to a relatively late time, although he's not going too slowly here, Sergio Perez. He's going at 100 miles an hour, whereas quite often you see cars going a little bit slower. When is he going to floor the throttle? There he goes. Perez floors the throttle, gets the race back underway in Azerbaijan. Charles Leclerc is right behind him. Perez has got to defend. Leclerc goes to the outside. Perez covers the inside, and that could give Verstappen the opportunity. Coming down into towards turn 2. Is the Red Bull going to be close enough? No, Leclerc covers the inside. There's an overtake further back as Lance Stroll goes on the attack, getting ahead of George Russell. Lewis Hamilton is trying to make his way back up through the field. Here comes Verstappen to get Leclerc for second place already. Coming into the third corner on the circuit. Verstappen to the inside. Verstappen up into second. He knows he's got to try and catch and pass his teammate Sergio Perez if he doesn't want his championship lead to be swallowed up. And into the turn 5. A great move from Fernando Alonso. Out of nowhere, lunges to the inside of his compatriot Carlos Sainz, and Alonso's up into fourth in the Aston Martin. Sainz in the Ferrari down to fifth. Stroll, Russell, Hamilton, Ocon and Hulkenberg, the rest of the top 10. Crucial for Verstappen that he got past Leclerc so quickly, Sandberg.
Crucial for Max Verstappen to get onto the back of Sergio Perez, but what a move by the wily old fox Fernando Alonso. Sainz didn't see that coming. We don't see many overtaking opportunities ever happen at that particular corner. Such a short straight, but he sent it down the inside, said to Carlos, right, I'm parking it down the inside, mate, see you later.
So they're coming towards the end of lap 14 out of 51. Sergio Perez is leading the way. He's 1.5 seconds ahead of his Red Bull teammate Max Verstappen. We've seen them racing hard already this year in Saudi Arabia, where Verstappen wanted to try and close in on his teammate but wasn't able to do so. Perez drove excellently. The two Mercedes are very close together here. Hamilton's just 4 tenths back from George Russell as they flash through at 180 miles an hour at that point on the circuit. Perez has got a 1.5 second advantage over Max Verstappen in second place. Then it's another second back to Charles Leclerc in third. Carlos Sainz is desperate to try and get back ahead of his teammate, and Hamilton sends it on George Russell into turn 1. Nice move from Hamilton. Russell tried to defend, but Hamilton fought, found the inside line, and he's now got back up into 7th place.
Oh, the way that started, it looked very Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, didn't it, back in 2000 and what was it? 18? Oh, but great move by Lewis. Now he's got to get his head down and try and get after Lance Stroll. Remember, he was up in 5th place before the pit stop window kind of opened for everybody. He's been shuffled down the order because of that safety car. So let's see if he can get after that Aston Martin.
Sergio Perez leading the way. If it finishes like this, the gap will go from 13 points. And Perez, well, depending who gets the fastest lap, but it'll chip away by some 7 points or so. And Verstappen, Leclerc on the attack of Perez had is kind of what gave Verstappen the opportunity to overtake him.
So the way that the Red Bull accelerates out of the corner and gets to their terminal velocity is different to the Ferrari. The Ferrari's top speed actually isn't bad, but it takes them longer to get to that top speed. So I think some of the straight line speed ability in the Red Bull is just about how they can get to 320.
Well, that was a restart, sorry guys.
Russell apologising for his poor restart there. Let's get an update from the championship. Cardiff versus Huddersfield. Laura Kenyon.
Still goalless, but relegation threatened Huddersfield, asking the majority of the questions, driving the tempo, just yet to find quality in the final third. All the atmosphere coming from the away end. 33 minutes gone, 0-0.
Keep you up to date with that battle at the bottom of the championship. DRS is now enabled. Max Verstappen is leading, is chasing Sergio Perez for the lead of the race in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Now, that unsafe release for Sergio Perez has been noted by the stewards, so that means they are aware of it, and then they need to look into whether to investigate it or whether it's fine, basically. That's what noted means. That's the stewards saying, yep, we've seen that there's a thing to look at, we'll look into whether we need to look into it.
If I was the driver advisor with the stewards, I'd be saying that really wasn't that bad. We've seen far worse ones.
No further investigation.
There we go. They were obviously listening to us, Jack.
Yeah,
that's what it
exactly.
was.
There are anyway, I don't need to get bogged down in that, but because there are some teams that listen to the radio coverage, like in the garage and stuff, which is always a bit weird when you find that out. Lap 16 of 51. Sergio Perez leading the race. 1.3 seconds at the moment ahead of Max Verstappen. He was 2 tenths quicker than Verstappen in Sector 1 on this lap, but Verstappen set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix on the last lap. I love races like this, where it's two drivers who now appear to be absolutely going for it because they both need to win it. Well, Perez needs to win it. Verstappen would really, 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 really like to. He doesn't need to, but I think he does within his soul.
Every time he puts on that race suit and puts the helmet on, he's out there to win the race. Let's see a replay now of Lance Stroll. Oh, and he's hit the wall as well on the inside.
Exactly the same as De Vries. He seems to be running okay at the moment. Stroll comes through and does a personal best lap of the Grand Prix, but he did it exactly the same way that Nick De Vries did, but just not quite as hard, basically. De Vries out of the race, Stroll still in the race. Gap at the end of the last lap, 1.5 seconds. Perez's advantage over Verstappen. He's holding on at the moment, lap 17 of 51. Perez in the lead, Verstappen second, Leclerc third, fourth is Alonso, fifth is Sainz, sixth is Stroll, seventh is Hamilton, eighth is Russell, Ocon ninth, Hülkenberg 10th. Andrew Benson.
And behind the Red Bulls, Jack, I think Fernando Alonso is sniffing his fourth consecutive third place here. He's already passed one Ferrari. He knows the Ferrari's got high tyre degradation. He's sitting about 1.3 seconds behind Charles Leclerc at the moment. I'm not saying he's going to be able to beat that car, but he's certainly got it on his mind right now.
That is if the DRS continuously works. Andrew Benson, they've had difficulties over the last 2 days to get that component working continuously. Let's just hope that it hangs on. Pit lane entry incident involving Russell, no further investigation.
That was when he overtook Lance Stroll, basically, coming into the pit lane. Didn't really seem to gain him anything because he never came out in front of Stroll. And Stroll reporting on the radio that the car is okay, despite that wall tap at the left-hander of turn 5. So, good news for Stroll. Hamilton is trying to overtake Lance Stroll in that fight over 6th place. Hamilton will be so frustrated, running in 5th, although he was about to get done by Alonso, to be fair. So whether the Mercedes is quicker than the Aston Martins ahead remains to be seen over the second half of this Grand Prix, or second and third thirds of this Grand Prix.
So we've had 2 cars hit the inside wall at turn, what's the number of the corner?
5.
At
5
turn
into 6.
5. But so one car has had to retire absolutely on the spot, being Nick De Vries, and Lance Stroll can continue and the car is absolutely fine. That's due to the angle at which the tyre hit the wall. Nick De Vries hit it late around the corner with more steering lock on, and Lance Stroll hit it more flush right on the side.
Kevin Magnussen has sent a lunge on Zhou Guanyu into the first corner. Got a little bit loose and Zhou then managed to get back at him. That is the fight over 16th position. Magnussen actually very, very nearly into the barriers on the exit of turn 1. Not quite sure how he didn't end up in the barriers, but he didn't. The Dane is still running in 17th position. The full top 10: Perez, Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso, Sainz, the top 5, Stroll, Hamilton, Russell, Ocon and Hülkenberg at the top 10. Gap at the front, still just 1.3 seconds. So still right together, but Verstappen not able to make any progress.
There's an interesting pattern I've noticed, Jack, in the last 2 or 3 laps between the Red Bulls. Perez is quite often going purple on the timing screen, so that means fastest lap of all of the race so far. He's not doing it on this lap as it happens, but in the first sort of sector and a half, and then Verstappen's coming back at him in the final sector with the help of the toe down the main straight and actually setting a sort of sequence of fastest laps. And Perez is just going purple now on the main straight. But here's Alonso's radio.
The Lance, my brake balance suggestion, as I am now, I think it's a good help.
Yeah, copy, Fernando, copy, all understood.
Are we going to end up with an Aston Martin bromance?
It looks like
here?
It, doesn't it?
This
yeah.
Alonso-Stroll relationship is fascinating.
Just to finish that point between the Rebels, what that suggests to me is that Perez has got really good pace, and it's only on the straight with the draft that Verstappen is able to match his lap time. Or I'm not saying he's miles quicker than Verstappen, but it's showing that it's not going to be an easy task for Verstappen to pass Perez. And just a point on the Aston Martins, I think what we've got here is that, first of all, Fernando Alonso is playing a smart political game. He knows the team's owned by Lance Stroll's father. He doesn't want to cause any problems. He's happy at Aston Martin. I also think he's beginning to feel that he's not really under any threat from Lance Stroll. And probably Lance Stroll feels he's not any real threat to Fernando Alonso. So it's quite a comfortable little situation there.
And tell him my brake bias change. What does that mean, Sam?
So the brake bias is the distribution between using the front brakes more or less than the rear brakes. In single-seater racing, you run a brake bias significantly more forwards than you do in anything else. It's not a 50-50 front to rear. It's more 60-40 towards the front. Now, we don't know what way he's gone. Presumably, he's gone slightly forwards on the brake bias to try and look after the rear tyres.
Why does that help look after the rear tyres?
Because if you have more brake pressure going through the rear brake discs, that adds more heat into the rear tyres, and then you can get more deg.
That 19 of 51. Sergio Perez leading the Grand Prix, 1.5 seconds now ahead of Max Verstappen, so gaining a couple of tenths of a second on this lap compared to his Red Bull teammate and championship leader. Oh, big slide there from Lance Stroll, and that is going to be Lewis Hamilton right on the back of him now as they come through the final couple of corners. Huge opportunity for Hamilton to get him into 6th place. Stroll made the mistake coming out of 16, got all sideways, caught the slide, but he's not going to be able to catch Hamilton here. Hamilton pulls to the outside, although as soon as he's out of the slipstream, he loses a bit of pace. He has the DRS though, covers the inside and gets ahead. Hamilton up into 6th spot, and I wonder if Stroll had just made the brake bias change.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say it, but also look at how ineffective the Mercedes is in the DRS zone down the straights. I mean, even just compared to the Aston Martin, that car has so much drag compared to some of the other cars around it. No wonder they can't go forwards that much in the racing.
Hamilton then up into 6th place after a mistake from Stroll. Stroll will try and fight back to Hamilton because there's 1.8 seconds from Hamilton in 6th to Carlos Sainz up in 5th position. Alonso's 2.6 seconds back from Charles Leclerc now, so he's dropping away a little bit. Stroll turned into the final corner and just, well, that's a strange one really. He kind of sort of went in deep and then the back snapped.
Yeah, understeer to oversteer balance, that one.
Yeah,
we on the TV before we saw the onboard, it looked like just a wild oversteer, but the understeer previously has put him onto the dust. He's then thought, I need to get back on the power, and then we've had the oversteers. We see the Red Bulls absolutely millimeters away from the walls, both of them pushing so hard. This is reminiscent of the race they had in Saudi Arabia, same order as well. Perez leading, Verstappen second, neither of them wanting to give an inch to the other.
But they're a bit visibly closer here, which makes it more fun. You know what I mean? I think in Saudi it was like sort of 6 seconds apart, but now they've been 1.3 seconds apart for kind of the whole of the restart. Lap 20 of 51. Sergio Perez leading. Gap comes down to 1.2 seconds at the line this time, so Verstappen chips away a little bit. Sergio Perez driving a very, very strong race out in front. Charles Leclerc is 8 seconds back, so they are certainly pushing. George Russell is closing in on the back of Lance Stroll, coming down towards the first corner, but he's not quite close enough to make the move there. Stroll's in 7th, Russell is in 8th, Ocon and Hülkenberg in 8th and 9th positions, but they are much further back.
You saw the Mercedes only gained roughly 10 metres down the entire straight by using DRS. If George Russell was in a Red Bull right now, I'm saying that he would have been attacking or in front of Lance Stroll going into turn 1. That has been... Besides the fact that they're good on their tyres, they've got a good car aerodynamically, it really is their ability to get down straight and use DRS brilliantly that is putting Red Bull way above everybody else right now.
Sergio Perez leading, Max Verstappen in 2nd. Perez, this was the thing I sort of was wincing at a moment ago, Sam, because he had a massive slide coming through turn 15.
That was fine. Loads of room. What are you talking about, Jack?
Okay, you know, on the replay, he did have at least 10 centimetres to the wall there, to be fair. But he's pushing, and they're both pushing.
They're both
fantastic.
Pushing, and we love to see that. We do like this little inter-team war that is occurring this season. I've got to say, my favourite for the championship is Max Verstappen. Will Max Verstappen win it? Yes, in my book, yes, and comfortably so. But, and it's a big but, Sergio Perez, I think he's lifted his game a little bit this year. It's a little bit closer. Now, we know that he's good on street circuits. It's when we get really into the middle of the season that Max Verstappen kind of stretches his legs, when we go to the normal tracks. But right now, Sergio Perez is operating at a very high level.
A lot of street circuits, though, this season in Formula One. A new street race in Las Vegas coming up at the end of the season. Okay, the Miami circuit after this isn't exactly a street circuit, even though they call it that. But you've got Montreal, there's a street circuit.
Why is
Singapore?
Why is Miami not a street circuit in your eyes?
Well, here's Sciences Radio.
Tires are stable, we are happy with tires and happy to push more and go hunting.
Okay, so Sainz being told he can push more and go hunting. And he's in 5th place at the moment, and he will try and close in on Fernando Alonso. Miami is a bit more of a sort of purpose-built facility, isn't it? Do you disagree? You think it's a pure street circuit?
What other races happen there during the year, Jack, for it to be a purpose-built racetrack? Besides the race out of the Miami
Benson, help me
Stadium.
out here.
I'm not going to help you out. I'm going to say why you're deluding yourself. You're saying it's a street circuit because it's in a car park, basically, and they construct it specifically, and there's not actually roads that cars drive on other than to park.
Correct.
But it's still a street circuit in the sense that it's on roads, it's surrounded by concrete walls, it has all the characteristics of a street circuit. I think that's what Sam's saying.
Okay.
Jack's wrong, I'm right.
Okay, fine.
There we go.
That's
easy.
That's the usual.
Yeah, you're used to that by now, Jack.
Lap 22 of 51. On these Baku city streets, they come down this left-hander at turn 15, out onto the back straight again. Now Russell still trying to get ahead of Lance Stroll. Stroll is dropping further and further back from Hamilton, which is quite interesting. That I wondered whether Stroll would be able to stick with Hamilton quite well, but actually Hamilton's caught the back of Sainz. He's only a second now back from Carlos Sainz. Sainz has been told he's allowed to push, but Hamilton on this lap, Alonso does a personal best. Hamilton is a tenth quicker on this lap than Carlos Sainz, and Sainz was 7/10 slower than Fernando Alonso. So he's been told he can go hunt Alonso, but I don't think he's got the pace to hunt Alonso just yet.
So Lewis Hamilton saying that he's seeing degradation on the hard tyres already. We're not even halfway through the race. Are we going to see people doing two stops? I really don't know. I mean, the fact that now this weekend's format has changed means that the teams have got very limited knowledge of this hard tyres. We see a move, Nico Hülkenberg trying to get past Esteban Ocon and not managing it into turn 3.
They're fighting over 9th place. Ocon in 9th, Hülkenberg in 10th. Lando Norris in 11th place is joining that fight as well. Now Norris has pitted, Ocon and Hülkenberg have not. So Norris is in a net 9th position at the moment when those other two make their pit stops, because they both started from the pit lane, Ocon and Hülkenberg. Sergio Perez on this lap takes another couple of tenths out of Verstappen in Sector 1. Verstappen will gain it back in Sector 3. Charles Leclerc is now 10 seconds back from Verstappen, and I said that Alonso did a good lap on that last lap. He did. It was 2 tenths quicker than Charles Leclerc, so not yet rapid enough to really close the gap to Leclerc, but it's something to keep an eye on.
I think we should consider plan B.
Copy. Which I think...
Stroll is really struggling with the rear. I don't think he'll make it to the end.
Yeah, A firm.
So Russell doesn't think that Lance Stroll in 7th will make it to the end of this race. Russell's saying we should consider plan B, which I presume would mean a 2-stopper.
Or maybe not. Maybe plan A was to do a 2-stopper, knowing that the tyres were going to struggle, and plan A,
But because they think Stroll will have to stop again,
exactly.
They should stay out.
Exactly.
We'll see. He's starting to push now, George Russell. He's only 4 tenths back from Lance Stroll as they come out of the left-hander of turn 2, up towards now turn 3. Hamilton is only 7 tenths back from Carlos Sainz as well in the fight over 5th place. This is a good drive today from Lewis Hamilton, considering he was running in 5th and then got stitched up a little by the safety car that dropped him all the way back to, I think he was 11th at the restart. He's managed to fight his way back through the order, get ahead of his teammate, get ahead of Lance Stroll, and now is just 7 tenths back from the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, the other Mercedes is chasing down Lance Stroll over 7th position. So both Mercedes on the attack in the race. Verstappen is still 1.5 seconds back from Perez up at the front, and if it finishes like this, Perez will take 7 points out of Max Verstappen's championship lead.
The Ferrari has a little bit more front end, which I think is hurting the rear tyres just that little bit more than obviously everybody else. They do have historically higher tyre deg, but the Mercedes has a little bit of understeer in the car, even compared to the Red Bull. The Red Bull turns fantastically well, and they can carry higher minimums everywhere pretty much compared to everybody. But the Mercedes of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, when you watch them on board, just a little bit of a push mid-corner, that's probably helping them look after the rear tyres.
To see whether Hamilton is going to be close enough this time through to make an overtake on Carlos Sainz for 5th place, down towards the first corner. No, he is not. It is half-time at Cardiff City Stadium. Laura?
It's Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 0. Chances few and far between, neither side attacking with any real potency, and for relegation threatened Huddersfield, 3 games without a win. They could really do with one today. A big 45 to come for Neil Warnock's side. 0-0.
Yeah, and big games coming up in the Premier League later on here on 5 Live. 4 2 p.m. kickoffs: Fulham versus Man City, Man United versus Villa, Bournemouth versus Leeds, and Newcastle versus Southampton. And then at 4:30 later on it's Liverpool versus Spurs, and we will be back with Steve Crossman to give you all the team news in around about 10 minutes time. But here at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, we are at half race distance in a fascinating race that Sergio Perez is leading. Max Verstappen led in the early stages, was struggling with his tyres, so had to pit. Coincidentally, at the same time, Nick de Vries had an accident which brought out the safety car, meaning that Sergio Perez was able to leapfrog Verstappen in the pit stops, and so Perez is leading, Verstappen is in second place. Charles Leclerc started on pole but soon swiftly dropped back behind the 2 Red Bulls and is now running in a fairly lonely 3rd position, with Fernando Alonso in 4th spot, Carlos Sainz in 5th, Hamilton 6th, Stroll 7th, Russell 8th, Ocon 9th, Nico Hülkenberg is in 10th place. Sandberg.
Fernando Alonso took close to half a second out of Charles Leclerc on that last lap. Everybody in the field is lapping in the mid to high 46s, 47s. It's only the Red Bulls that are dipping into the 45s, Jack.
Across the line they come, and yeah, both Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen do a 1 minute 45.6 on that last lap. In fact, they were separated by just 9 thousandths of a second on their lap times last time through, and once again the gap remains at 1.4 seconds, and we're not expecting any more pit stops for the Red Bulls. So if Verstappen wants to win this race and extend his championship lead, he's got to make the overtake on the track. There's a few fighting cars further back. Ocon is trying to defend from Nico Hülkenberg as they come down towards the first corner, but Hülkenberg isn't quite close enough to make the move still. They've been fighting for a good 4 or 5 laps now, I think. At the back of all of that queue is Yuki Tsunoda in 12th place through the left-hander of turn 2 and onto the second of the 2 really long straights in Baku. Sergio Perez is still leading at 12 seconds now, the gap to Leclerc. That's how you know that the Red Bulls are pushing, because they're 12 seconds ahead of the Ferrari. They're in an absolute league of their own, and if they were just pootling around saving their tyres, they wouldn't be that far ahead.
But I think that's because of the order that they're currently in. Verstappen does not want to let Perez win the race, and Perez wants to go and win the race, whereas if Max Verstappen was having another one of his comfortable afternoons, he could just sit there 7-8 seconds in front and not really worry, but they're both pushing.
Lance Stroll set his personal best lap of the race on the last lap. He's running in 7th place, and he's managed to break the DRS of George Russell in 8th position. Hamilton is still in DRS range of Carlos Sainz. Well, he was at the start of the lap, but he's had a fairly scruffy first 2/3 of this lap, Lewis Hamilton, so the gap was 0.9 seconds at the line. It's gone up to 1.7 seconds over the course of this lap so far, so Hamilton's struggling to continue to make progress. Sainz is making no progress, no inroads on the back of Alonso. He was told to go and attack a few laps ago. He's not able to.
I don't think he's got the pace today, Jack. I really don't. I think Carlos Sainz had a tricky start to the year. Alonso, though, is doing exactly what Andrew Benson said about 10 minutes ago. I think he recognises Ferrari's weakness, and he's playing the long game here. He just wants to see what happens to Charles Leclerc, that Ferrari, and his set of hard compound tyres. Sit there, look after his tyres, and pounce when the time's right. We're on lap 27. Points are awarded after 51 laps.
Wise.
Very wise.
Very wise. Sergio Perez then continuing to lead the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with Verstappen in 2nd place. Yuki Tsunoda is chasing down Lando Norris in their fight over 11th place. It's the AlphaTauri engine that you can hear as he goes down through the gears into the left-hander at turn 3. We're just having a look at Nico Hülkenberg in 10th place, who's dropped back a little from Esteban Ocon ahead.
Hit wall entry 50, check front right, pressure.
Pressure's okay, all okay.
So Hülkenberg saying he hit the wall on the entry to turn 15, somewhere I've never seen anyone hit the wall before. He just glanced the right-hand side of the wall before turning into the left-hander, but the team saying that the tyres look okay, no puncture or any damage for Hülkenberg as he keeps running in 10th place, but he and Ocon in 9th have still got to make another pit stop, so they really need a safety car or something, to be perfectly honest, if they are going to finish this race in the points, even though they're running 9th and 10th at the moment for Ocon and Hülkenberg respectively. Now Hamilton is still closing in on the back of Carlos Sainz, but is out of the DRS range, as I mentioned on that last lap. He's 1.5 seconds back. Alonso's got the gap to Leclerc down to 2 seconds. Another 0.3 of a second that Alonso took out of Leclerc on that last tour, so it's 1.8 seconds at the line. The gap between Charles Leclerc in third in the Ferrari and Alonso fourth in the Aston Martin, the 41-year-old who's finished third in the first 3 races of the season so far, looking to try and claim that position again. And it's a very, very strong race from Fernando Alonso, as you've kind of come to expect, really. And it is good to see him fighting back at the front of the order. And there were questions, Sam, whether, you know, the first couple of races for Alonso were a bit of, not exactly luck, but, you know, Aston Martin coming out of the blocks very quickly, and then soon everyone will catch and pass. Was it a bit of a fluke? Here's Sainz's radio.
What do you think between plan A and plan C? Are you still happy plan A?
Yes, the moment, yes.
So Sainz still happy with plan A, but Alonso, yeah, proving that he can be here the whole time.
So the wording from Carlos Sainz means plan A clearly is a one-stop strategy.
Yeah.
Plan C would be clearly to move to a two-stop strategy.
So where does that leave plan B?
Well, I don't know what plan B is. I really don't know.
That's what I can't work out. There's
Ferrari
only 2
have
options.
so many strategies,
Yeah.
but anyway.
None of them good.
Fernando Alonso, yeah, he's world-class, firstly. He's rejuvenated after a difficult period back in Formula One where he's been given uncompetitive cars. Aston Martin have delivered on their promise. They've given him a car that actually, I think, exceeded his expectations, and he's absolutely loving it. He's driving superbly. He's averaging right now, during this stint, 7, 8, 9 tenths quicker a lap than his teammate Lance Stroll. Now, Lance Stroll, he's a good driver. And, you know, some people would question his position in Formula One in terms of legitimacy, given the fact that his father owns the team. But he's a good driver. Don't get me wrong, he's a good, solid driver. But Fernando Alonso is seriously world class. I think, you know, if you were to give marks out of 10 for the start of the season, he is a 10 out of 10 for what he's been able to achieve.
Only 2 world championships to his name in 2005 and 2006. What's the stat, Andrew? He's 7 points from being a 10-time world champion or something.
I think it's 11 because of the extra bits he would have needed to be ahead of the drivers that beat him. So he lost that by 1 point in 2007, by 4 points in 2010, and 3 points in 2012. But obviously he needs 1 more point than each of those years to be actually champion.
So 11 points from being a 5-time world champion is the sort of theory.
Basically, yeah. And of course, if he'd made the decision when he left McLaren at the end of 2007 to go to Red Bull, he'd probably be a 7-time world champion.
Yeah, very true. But he didn't.
Ifs and buts.
Yeah, exactly. Lap 29 of 51. Sergio Perez has got his lead up to 2.3 seconds now to Max Verstappen. That last lap, he took 0.3 of a second out of the championship leader and the team leader, really, at Red Bull. Across the line comes Perez now, into the first left-hander, turns it into the 90-degree corner, and then comes down in towards turn 2, and the gap up to 2.3 seconds. So he's pulled out a second on Verstappen over the last couple of laps. Could this be Verstappen?
Verstappen's had a really scrappy last lap. He's just done a 46.3 compared to Sergio Perez 45.7. So there's 6 tenths gone just in 1 lap. You know, he was within 1.5 seconds. 2.2, that's going to be tough.
Is there an argument that he's doing an Alonso here? Just sort of, well, here's his radio.
Just give us heads up with what you're struggling with, Max.
The balance between the diff and engine braking is not good.
Okay, we'll have a look.
Here we go then, Sam. Explain to us the balance between the differential and the engine braking, and the balance between them.
I just want to pass that over to my colleague to the right, to Andrew Benson. Clearly, there's something happening with the car, maybe under braking from when it goes from longitudinally to laterally loaded, when he's doing the downshifts, and what's happening with the differential, locking and unlocking, and causing some disturbances or some anomalies that he doesn't like.
So Verstappen struggling under braking then by the sounds of things. But again, it wasn't. And look, not knocking Verstappen here, but sort of struggling with the balance. Doesn't really like.
He's very sensitive to engine braking and the diff locking, is Max Verstappen. I think that whenever he's complaining, it's normally about that kind of thing. It's interesting, Jack. Different drivers are sensitive about different things. So my teammate in Formula E is very sensitive about certain software changes that he does in the car. I'm more sensitive to damping and what the damping has an effect on within the race car. That's Max's thing.
Very interesting. Right, we're on lap 31 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. 21 laps to go. Fascinating fight up at the front between Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen. 2.3 seconds between them. If it finishes like this, Perez will chip in to Max Verstappen's championship lead, and Alonso is now only a second back from Charles Leclerc. We'll be back here in a couple of minutes' time, but now we'll go back to Steve Crossman for all the team news ahead of the 2 o'clock kickoffs this afternoon. Steve.
Thank you very much, Jack. Yeah, we'll be back with the commentary very, very shortly, but our base for our first Premier League game at 2 p.m. is Craven Cottage for Fulham against Manchester City. Pep Guardiola's side can go top with a win for the first time in 10 weeks. John Murray has the team news.
Well, Fulham are still without the suspended Mitrovic, of course. They bring Vinicius and Di Cordova-Reid back into the team for James and Solomon, who are both on the bench. So Harry Wilson is fit to continue in the team, but Willian is absent after he injured his hamstring in the warm-up at Aston Villa on Tuesday. Manchester City, like Fulham, make 2 changes from midweek. The headline is no Kevin De Bruyne in the team or on the bench. City, though, say he's just not fully fit, the intimation being that it's nothing too serious for Kevin De Bruyne. So 2 changes for them. Mahrez and Alvarez coming in for De Bruyne, and Bernardo Silva, who is among the substitutes, and City naming 2 goalkeepers on the bench in Ortega and Scott Carson.
So Fulham versus Manchester City on 5 Live. There is a choice of listening, though, at 2 on Sports Extra. You can hear Manchester United against Aston Villa. Lee Blakeman.
Hi, Steve. 2 changes for Manchester United from the side that started at Spurs on Thursday. Wan-Bissaka and Anthony drop to the bench as Malacia and Sabitzer both come in to start. Aston Villa unchanged for the 4th game in a row.
Let's head to St James's Park next. Newcastle needing a win to further cement their place in the top 4. Southampton don't need a miracle to stay up, but they are trending that way, Chris Coles.
Yes, bigger match for Southampton, you feel, given their perilous position at the bottom of the table, 6 points from safety. Not that anyone gives them much of a chance against a Newcastle side who do make plenty of changes from a 4-1 win over Everton. 4 in total. Matt Targett, Sean Longstaff, Callum Wilson and Miguel Almiron all out, replaced by Anthony Gordon, Alexander Isak, Dan Burn and Jacob Murphy. For the antithesis of Newcastle's form, see Southampton winless in 8, losing 5 of them. Bad defeat to Bournemouth on Thursday, unsurprisingly. Plenty of changes, 5 in total. Duje Chaleta-Sarr, Roman Perro, Adam Armstrong, Mohamed Elyounoussi and Theo Walcott all drop out, replaced by Lianco, Armel Bella-Kotchap, Moussa Djenepo, Kamaldeen Sulemana and Stuart Armstrong.
That is one of 2 games you can listen to live on the BBC Sport website and app. The other, Bournemouth against Leeds. Javi Gracia's side are in trouble. 1 point from 4. Bournemouth breathing much more easily. Jonathan Overend.
Yep, they really are down here on the Riviera. Bournemouth midfielder Marcus Tavernier picked up some hamstring pain in that win at Southampton in the week and isn't risked today, so Dango Ouattara replaces him out wide. There's no Chris Mepham today, so a reshuffle in defence by Gary O'Neill. He brings in right back Adam Smith, probably going to a flat 4 today with Vinia going back to left back. As for Leeds, 3 changes. Christensen, Somerville and Nonto in for Junior Firpo, Sinisterra and Rodrigo. We'll have to see how they shape up at the back when the match starts, because they have got 2 right backs in there. Could be they go to a 4 with Christensen on the left.
Another 2 o'clock kickoff is in the Women's Super League. Manchester City, one of 4 clubs still battling it out for the title, but games are now running out for Reading. They go into this one bottom of the league. Here is Ross Heaton at the Academy Stadium.
And City know that any hopes of a first title since 2016 are likely to require wins in all 4 of their remaining games. They still have a derby against United and Chelsea on the final day among those fixtures. As for Reading, they sit rock bottom, 2 points from safety and have lost their last 9 on the road, while City are unbeaten here in the last 17. The hosts make just 1 change, with Roebuck replacing Keating in goal, while Reading are unchanged.
The final of the World Snooker Championship is about to begin in Sheffield. It's the 4 times champion Mark Selby against Belgium's Luca Bressel. Jamie Broughton is at the Crucible.
Afternoon, Steve. Well, Mark Selby didn't leave the Crucible until 2 a.m. this morning after his 17-15 semi-final win over Mark Allen. But the snooker legend would have carried on all night if that's what it had taken to reach the final. Selby is the ultimate competitor, while his safety game gives his opponents few chances, so he's the heavy favourite to win this final. But don't write off Luca Purcell. He produced the greatest comeback in Crucible history to overcome Sijar Wee in their semi-final when he'd been 9 frames behind. 18 is the magic number to be crowned champion of the world.
It might need an even bigger comeback for anybody to stop Max Verstappen this Formula 1 season, but his teammate is giving it a good go. Let's get the rest of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with Sam Bird, Andrew Benson and Jack Nicholls.
Thank you, Steve. Yep, Sergio Perez leading the way here. Second place man in the championship. Max Verstappen leading by 13 points in the standings, but Perez, after beating Verstappen in Saudi Arabia, is looking like he's beating, well, he is beating him here currently, but we've still got a little way to go. Lap 34 of 51. The gap between them is 2.3 seconds. It was 1.3 seconds about 10 or 15 laps ago. And Perez is doing a really good job here, Sambird.
Driving a really solid race at the front. Whenever Max Verstappen looks like he's picking up the pace, Perez says, do you know what, mate, if you can do that, I'm going to do the same, and then puts in the best lap of the race. Looks like Max Verstappen's got his work cut out this afternoon.
Charles Leclerc is 15 seconds back in third place. Fourth is Fernando Alonso, 2.3 seconds back from Leclerc. That gap did come down to just under a second, but it's extended again a little bit. Carlos Sainz is not in that fight. He's running in 5th place in the other Ferrari, just ahead of a queue of cars, really, of Hamilton, Stroll and George Russell, and then Esteban Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg in 9th and 10th, completing the top 10, but they've still got to pit because they started on the hard tyre from the pit lane and are yet to use their second tyre compound, so they won't be running there come the end of the Grand Prix. So Norris is likely to be up into 9th place and Yuki Tsunoda potentially completing the top 10. They're 11th and 12th at the moment, but Sergio Perez having a very, very strong race out at the front, 2.3 seconds ahead of Verstappen. We're just about to see, well, we saw a replay a couple of moments ago of Max Verstappen getting super close to the wall and maybe even just slightly brushing the wall on the exit of the left-hander of turn 15. Perez here.
What happened at 15? Copy.
Perez has just done what Nico Hülkenberg did a few laps ago and clipped the wall on the right-hand side before turning into the left-hander of turn 15. So we're seeing quite a lot of wall hits today, little glancing blows that are a little unusual, to be honest, Sam.
I think this is a very high-speed street circuit. Of course, they've been to Saudi, but the walls here are slightly different to the walls in Saudi Arabia in the fact that they've got jagged edges. It's block and then placed another block, so they're kind of at sharp angles. And with the new aero components over the front wheels, sometimes it's difficult for the driver to see just where the edge of the tyre is, and that's what we're seeing today.
Lap 35 of 51. Perez across the line again on that last lap. These two are just trading fastest laps. It's fantastic. Perez did a personal best on that last lap, but Max Verstappen set the fastest lap of the race, 0.04 of a second quicker. Here's Carlos Sainz's radio.
We are at the tyre life till the end.
So Sainz being told, we're happy that you don't need to pit again in this race. He's in 5th place at the moment, but he's got Lewis Hamilton right behind him, just 1.1 seconds back. Through the left-hander of turn 3 and out onto the back straight comes Alex Albon. He's in a fight with Kevin Magnussen. They're running in 14th and 15th positions, the Williams driver. There's a big old queue of cars basically up behind Ocon in 9th place, where everybody is very close together, but not a huge amount of positional changes. Into the pits now comes Valtteri Bottas, who's having a fairly miserable race. That's his 3rd pit stop, Valtteri Bottas. He's having a miserable season, to be honest. The Alfa Romeo is not particularly quick, and he's getting fairly well dealt with by his teammate Zhou Guanyu.
Well, he pitted, what was it, on lap 7, I think, for the hard compound, then pitted again under safety car like everybody else, and now's pitted again for the mediums. To be fair, though, Jack, he had nothing to lose. He was towards the back of the order anyway. I suppose what he's thinking is, if there's a safety car, I can now try and pick up a load of places on a brand new set of medium compound tyres. And you never know, I might scrape a point at the end.
Yeah, a bit of a...
But he would need a safety car now, basically.
At 36 of 51, Sergio Perez leading the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is in 2nd place, 2.6 seconds further back. Now on that last lap, Perez chipped a couple more tenths out. He did a 1 minute 44.8. the fastest lap of the race, with Verstappen 3/10 slower. I have to say, I'm loving this race out of the front between Perez and Verstappen. Look, people don't like... Some people find Formula 1 boring and motor racing boring. And that's fair. I obviously don't. And you know what I love? It's two drivers just going flat out, chasing each other, 2 seconds between them, non-stop, fastest lap, fast. There's no overtakes, they don't have to race, they don't have to crash, they don't have to reverse grid, they don't have to sprint. They just go at it for an hour and a half, and even if nothing happens, I love it.
No,
but I think that's my problem.
It is really fun. It's not wheel-to-wheel action like what we see in other formulas or what we see further down the pack, but what you've got is two guys that drive for the same team wanting to win a Grand Prix, and both of them giving it absolutely everything. Team orders? No team orders. Slow down? Absolutely not. No, we're going to give it everything every corner.
210 miles an hour, brushing concrete walls.
I mean, Christian Horner must be having kittens on the pit wall, just thinking, please guys, don't do anything silly, we're on for a maximum score, just bring the cars home. But neither of them want to do that. They both giving it absolutely everything that they can. 15
laps to go, so a little under half an hour remaining in this Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Sergio Perez leading, Verstappen in second. Andrew Benson, BBC's chief F1 writer, we haven't heard, there's no real kind of team orders going on here at Red Bull, because I guess there's no possibility for them to happen.
Well, Christian Horner said before the race started that they were going to be allowed to race as long as they respected each other and respected the team, and that seems to be what's happening. I think if Verstappen was quicker, then it would be a different picture.
If he's all over the back of him.
The back of him, but can't pass him quite, even with the DRS. We got Hamilton's closing up on Sainz here. Meanwhile, just ahead of them, or a little bit ahead of them, Leclerc has managed to pull 3.5 seconds on Alonso at the moment, so their battle's still raging quite happily, but Hamilton's really having a go at the back of Sainz here as they go through the sort of right angle corners through the streets of Baku, heading towards the castle section. But yes, as I was saying, I think if Verstappen was demonstrably quicker, but couldn't quite get past, then it'd be a different scenario. But it's what we saw in Saudi Arabia. Perez is able to keep Verstappen at arm's length. It's a highly accomplished. Here's some Joe radio.
Joe, we have to box this lap. We have an issue. Box this lap. Box.
That's Joe in the Alfa Romeo out of the race. He's not just holding him at bay, Andrew. The gap's up to 3 seconds now. Perez is pulling away.
Exactly. That's what I meant by holding him at arm's length, and then he's pulled away in the last few laps. He's basically controlling the race. It's an extremely impressive drive from Sergio Perez. And as I was saying to you earlier, Jack, I think if he can sustain this to the end of the race, this is his best Formula 1 victory. And it won't knock Verstappen's confidence, but it'll certainly give him some pause for thought.
Lap 38 of 51. How close is Hamilton to Sainz here as they come through turn 16? Less than a second, so he'll get DRS this time through. Will Carlos Sainz. Hamilton on the attack to try and get up into 5th position. As you say, Alonso's attack on Leclerc has waned a little bit. Over the line they come. Hamilton will pop open the DRS, but he's just a little bit too far back, even though he has the drag reduction system. He gets up to 206 miles an hour, 196 for Carlos Sainz, but it's then on the second run up towards turn 3 that he struggles to kind of get closer to. Russell is 1.7 seconds back from Lance Stroll, and then it is still Ocon and Hülkenberg in 9th and 10th position. Let's go to Cardiff, Laura.
Still Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 0. A big second half, a relegation threatened Huddersfield. Neil Warnock bringing on Joseph Humbo for Brahim Diarra. A scrappy game so far. 51 minutes gone, 0-0.
Yeah, huge game that for Huddersfield at the bottom of the championship. We've got all the 2 o'clock games coming up at 2 o'clock here on 5 Live, and we'll keep you up to date with all of the Premier League action this afternoon. Mercedes are getting ready in the pits then, and I presume that is for Russell. They reckon they're gonna pit Russell, would be my prediction here, Sam. He's got 17 seconds back to Esteban Ocon behind him. Ocon and Hülkenberg have still got to pit, so maybe they think they've got enough of a window to just do something a bit different.
Well, those two need to pit at some point. They can't do the whole race on one set of tyres.
Because it's against the rules.
Exactly, so it is a free pit stop indeed. He might come under, he might be in a little bit of traffic with them for a little bit, but they should be pitting anytime soon. I'm really fascinated by the Perez Verstappen. What happens after this Grand Prix? Because in the past, Max Verstappen has a free rein on regards to the upgrades, how he wants the car and the car's philosophy going forwards. Perez is now saying, right guys, I can do the same thing. I can go and win us some races. I could go and win us a world title this year. So does he have more of an influence and more of a say on the car's balance going forwards and what upgrades they do? Because currently he's looking, well, certainly here, he's looking the faster driver. I'm still saying that Max Verstappen is the number one and Sergio Perez is the number two driver. And as we get through further on down the season, they will go on the Max Verstappen style of driving, setup adjustments and balance for the car. But Perez is doing a great job.
But does he need to have influence? Because the car they've built now is for Max Verstappen and Perez is driving it fine. Like last season sort of got slightly kind of retconned in a way where, oh yeah, Perez was only good at the start of the year because the car was well over the weight limit and it was understeery, and Perez loves understeer. Verstappen can't deal with understeer. And then it went more towards Verstappen's style, and then he destroyed Perez as the season went on. There hasn't been that sort of discussion, and you know, you could physically see it understeering last year. There's not really been any discussion that Verstappen isn't happy with this car, or that it, you know, that it's overweight, or any of those issues that were present last year. So Perez seems to be happy with the direction that it's gone in, and it would have been entirely gone in the direction for Max, no?
Yeah, true. It'll be an interesting thing to see play out as this season unfolds, whether a gap starts to emerge or whether it doesn't. Let's hope it doesn't, Jack, because we want a world championship fight, and it's not going to be coming from anywhere but Sergio Perez versus Max Verstappen. That's the fight that we're going to be seeing this year. Charles Leclerc, as well as he's driven this weekend, isn't in the running. He's 20 seconds, over 20 seconds now behind the lead two.
Yeah. So Sergio Perez leading 3.5 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen in second place. Charles Leclerc in third. He's managed to get the gap up to Alonso to 4.4 seconds now, so looking fairly comfortable in that third spot. Leclerc, Sainz is not comfortable at all. Hamilton's just 0.4 of a second behind him as they come through the left-hander of turn 3. Wasn't quite able to get close enough again. It's like that. He's not quite got enough to get close enough into turn 1, and then again not quite enough to get close enough into turn 3. This is a really nice fight between Carlos Sainz in 5th in the Ferrari and Hamilton 6th in the Mercedes. No, Russell didn't pit, by the way. No one has pitted, even though Mercedes and also Ferrari were kind of lurking in the pit lane. Neither of them have decided to go for it just yet. So close to the walls every time. I love some corners on back. Overall, I don't think it's the greatest Formula 1 circuit in the world. But there's some really, really sketchy sections, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
It is great fun. When you see these world-class drivers millimetres away from some of these walls, it is good. I think this is Lewis Hamilton's best shot. If he can just get a good exit out of here, the left-hander, get on the power well over the curb, and now drive towards the start-finish line. This is his best opportunity. Normally he's been around 70 metres back and can't make an inroad. Now he looks about 30 metres back. Has he got enough, Jack, as he crosses the DRS line now? Let's see if he can catch the Ferrari.
Hamilton closing, getting up to 210 miles an hour as they come into turn 1. Noses towards the inside, but he's not quite close enough. Very, very neat and quick through the first corner there, Hamilton. And he's going to be 0.3 back as they come out of turn 2. He nails that as well. Pretty decent exit, though, for Carlos Sainz. So even though Hamilton now pops the DRS open on the run down towards turn 3, closes the gap, he's going to be as close as he has been so far this race. But he's not quite able to get through yet. This is going to be so frustrating for Hamilton, but he's still got 10 laps to go at the end of this one to try and get up into 5th position. Really nice fight between these two. Andrew Benson.
I just wanted to make a point about the gap, the lead battle, by the way, Jack, which, by the way, Perez is now 3.6 seconds ahead of Verstappen and looking as if he's beginning to be in total control of this race. I'm just beginning to start to write my report. This is my job. Unfortunately, I have to sort of start taking my eyes off the track action as the sort of final third of the race develops and start tapping
So what,
away.
you write the report by not watching the race?
Well, I'm listening to you, Jack, and thankfully your commentary is exquisitely good. So I can stay in touch with it that way.
I don't need this sarcasm.
But no, there's no sarcasm involved whatsoever in that. There may be normally, but not in that. Anyway, the point, what I've realised, and obviously you probably remember this, but when Verstappen, we're saying what we're saying is basically the race turned on the safety car, right? We accept that. Verstappen was leading. He pitted just before the safety car, and then the safety car came out. Perez was able to pit. That gave him the lead. But let's not forget that just before the safety car, Perez had passed Leclerc, and he closed in at Verstappen at a couple of tenths a lap. Verstappen was struggling with his tyres, and they brought him into the pits. So it began to look, even as early as that Perez had a pace advantage over Verstappen. So it would be wrong, I think, to characterise this as a race that he was gifted just because of the safety car.
Yeah.
I think he's been absolutely competitive from the very beginning.
Because there's an argument that Verstappen could have pitted and Perez could have extended that stint, and they could have had a race out. So this is absolutely not a lucky race for Sergio Perez. 2.8 seconds to go. Hamilton again close to Carlos Sainz, coming up into the left-hander of turn 3. Not quite able to do anything about it. And if I had a theory at one point. Here we go. Fernando Alonso has just taken 4 tenths out of Charles Leclerc and is currently doing the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. So maybe Alonso has hovered around and is now going to try his attack. But I was going to say that my theory, or my wonder, that maybe that was Verstappen's plan doesn't seem to be coming to fruition, because you thought he would have sent it by now.
Absolutely, but with 9 laps to go, he's just taken half a second out of Sergio Perez on that last lap.
Verstappen pushing, Perez pushing as well. Verstappen getting so close to the walls on the outside. Does he touch it at turn 4? Not quite, but he's had a few brushes with the barriers so far today, Max Verstappen, but he's still running in second place with Sergio Perez out in front. That last lap, they did pretty much identical lap times. Just about 500ths of a second, 600ths of a second separating the two of them on the last lap. Bit of traffic to come. They've just had to overtake Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. The top 10 is Perez, Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso, Sainz, Hamilton, Stroll, Russell, Ocon and Hulkenberg. When are Ocon and Hulkenberg going to pit? They're in 9th and 10th positions. Feels like they're just waiting for a safety car. And if not, they'll just pit on the last lap, I guess. That seems to be the theory for Ocon and Hulkenberg. Russell's almost got a free lap, so he could a free pit stop, but he's actually got within 0.8 of a second of Lance Stroll as well. So both Mercedes are on the attack in these closing stages. Fernando Alonso says the fastest first sector of anyone. The gap comes down to 3.7 seconds. He barely took any time out of Leclerc on that last lap, and Leclerc is pushing too. So hammers going down in the fight for 3rd and 4th, but Alonso not quite able to make the progress. Lap 43 of 51, very much the closing stages of this Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Then we'll be back for all of the Premier League coverage this afternoon here on 5 Live. And all of the post-race analysis from here you can hear on the Checker Flag podcast, which will be released a little bit later on this afternoon, or this early evening. This afternoon, I think. The producer seems in fine fettle today, producer Paddy. So I think he'll knock it out quite quickly. Just having a look at Hulkenberg, who is fighting with his car so much. We've already seen him clip the wall on the entry to turn 15. He's now had a little brush on the exit of turn 15. Charles Leclerc sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix now on a 1:44.6. Big lap that from Charles Leclerc, 2 tenths quicker than Perez and Verstappen out front. And in fact, Alonso was quicker than Perez and Verstappen out front as well, doing identical lap times to the nearest 3,000ths of a second, Leclerc and Alonso. So as I say, Alonso's decided to push, but it doesn't look as though Alonso is able to catch Leclerc. Right, there's been a goal in Cardiff. Is it a big one, Laura?
It's a massive one. It's Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 1. Relegation threatened. Huddersfield get the breakthrough. Joseph Hungbo, the substitute, with a crucial goal, pounced on a defensive mistake. And how important could that be in Huddersfield's survival? Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 1.
Wow, big goal then for Huddersfield. Lap 44 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and Hamilton is so close every time to the back of Carlos Sainz. It feels like he needs just another kind of half a car length, and then he'll be able to get it done. It's not a case of being miles back, it's just half a car length closer and he'd be able to send a move.
I mean, that Mercedes is... It's not the best car out there at the moment, but it's such a shame that their DRS is so ineffective. they don't have enough straight line speed. So even when he starts in the DRS zone, he never looks really like he's ever going to get close enough to the back of Carlos Sainz.
That goal, if it finishes like that, between Cardiff and Huddersfield, would move Huddersfield up above Rotherham, and they would be 3 points clear of Reading in the relegation zone with a game in hand as well. Sergio Perez, his advantage up at the front is now up to 3.5 seconds over Max Verstappen. He was half a second quicker on that last lap, a personal best lap of the race for Sergio Perez. Brilliant drive, this. Brilliant drive.
I didn't know you were football talking as well as F1 talking.
I do all the talking.
I mean, if you want to talk about football, we can go to the game yesterday.
Okay.
For people listening, Jack is an avid Wolves fan. Oops.
Yeah. After the sprint race finished yesterday, the sprint race finished at 4, so my plan was sprint race finishes, finish at like 3:30, we'll do the podcast, then I'll watch the second half of the Wolves game, finish the podcast, turn the Wolves game on. Maybe I won't watch the second half of this.
As we were doing the show yesterday, we could see the score going up like a cricket score. I enjoyed seeing your face.
Yeah. Enjoy the Bournemouth game this afternoon. I hope it goes well for you. Lap 45 of 51. It was sarcasm, I don't.
And 3.6 seconds between Perez and Verstappen. Last lap, again, fastest lap of his race. Sergio Perez, 44.7. Just driving superbly.
Yeah, really, really strong stuff. Hamilton, meanwhile, is still 0.6 back from Carlos Sainz. He's doing well today, Hamilton, you have to say. Even if he doesn't manage to, if he manages to get back past Sainz and finish in 5th place, that'll be a really strong race, actually, considering where he was to then which was 5th position before the pit stops, to then where he qualified, to then drop back to 11th and come back through to 5th would be a really strong effort, I think, from Hamilton.
He's had a good Grand Prix. I think he really has. He's maximised every opportunity. He got dealt a bit of a tough blow with the safety car, but he has been the #1 driver today at Mercedes. I think he's clearly had the pace over his teammate George Russell, as we see Lando Norris struggling in 10th place.
I think he's just got ahead of Hulkenberg. I think that was him overtaking Hulkenberg and getting up into that 10th spot. Yeah, because Hulkenberg was 10th at the line, so I think Norris has pulled off an overtake. Don't know where was that, at turn 7 or something?
Well, remember, Hulkenberg and Ocon haven't pitted yet, so by now their tyres will be really, really weak on traction. And yes, Lando Norris on the traction phase towards the tight right-hander just gets Nico Hulkenberg. Lando Norris for 9th place. I think that's a dead certainty, to be honest, with Ocon struggling as well for pace, and the fact that he has to pit.
It was a lock-up on the way in on the left front for Hulkenberg. That's what put him offline coming out of turn 6. And then the move was made by Lando Norris, who gets him into 10th place. But as you say, the car in front is Esteban Ocon, who still needs to pit as well at some point. And now Hulkenberg is going to get overtaken here potentially by Yuki Tsunoda on the run down towards the first corner. Tsunoda to the inside. Ooh, yeah, he doesn't quite have the confidence to fully make the move there. If it finishes like this, with Charles Leclerc leading having the fastest lap of the race, the gap would come down to just 6 points at the top of the championship. And Verstappen doesn't have enough room to do a pit stop and get fastest lap. Russell does. And Russell, I think the Mercedes team might be pitting him to set the fastest lap, and that would certainly mean, with 5 laps to go, that neither Verstappen or Perez would get that point. So the gap would come down to 6 points at the top of the championship in Verstappen's advantage.
Esteban Ocon has just radioed into Alpine saying it's getting darker. Now, we've just seen a picture of the sky. It does look quite dark and quite bleak out there. I wonder if we can see any drops of rain before the end. We've only got 4 laps to go, but I tell you what, a bit of rain would make this exciting, Jack.
Certainly would. Perez leading, Verstappen in 2nd place, Leclerc in 3rd, Alonso 4th, 3.4 seconds between them. Carlos Sainz is in 5th, Hamilton still a second back with 5 to go. They're just coming across the line now, down towards turn 1, and Hamilton might be, I think he's out of DRS range this time, so he's dropped back a little bit. Have we had a wet race in Baku before?
No, I don't believe we have. Not a wet lap, let alone a wet race.
Really?
One thing I have to say, I think hats off to Pirelli for this hard compound tyre at this circuit. It's been brilliant. It's given us a really entertaining race where drivers can push from start to finish. On the last lap again,
Just hang in there. Just try to stay out. The only chance is if we get some kind of safety car or a red.
So that's Nico Hulkenberg saying we need to pit. The tyres are really bad, and the team saying, look. Well, but now it's gone, to be honest. Now he's down in 12th place. It's gone. When he was in the points still, there was a chance of getting a point if the red flag came out or a safety car, but now he's dropped out of the points. I think it's going to be a tough one for Hulkenberg. Ocon, though, is still there in 9th place, but he will have to pit at some point. The thing is, if there's a red flag because of a big crash or something, you get to change your tyres in the pits, free of charge, as it were, and so that's what they are hoping for. But don't think it's, well, who knows what's going to happen at Baku, to be honest.
They are indeed. They're hoping, and they will pit presumably on the last lap so that they get their mandatory pit stop in. But the interesting thing, Jack, is that Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen are able to do fastest lap after lap after lap. So I think this hard compound tyre has given us quite a spectacle at the front today.
Half an hour away from the 2 o'clock kickoffs here on 5 Live. We'll bring you all of the coverage. Some big games this afternoon. Manchester City are away at Fulham at Craven Cottage. Man United versus Aston Villa in that fascinating fight over the European places. Bournemouth versus Leeds is a big one at the bottom at the Vitality. And Newcastle versus Southampton at St James's Park. Liverpool versus Spurs later on this afternoon.
Is it 2:30 kickoffs?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock kickoffs, okay. I thought you said 2:30 because I'll be at the dentist at 2:30. Do you get the terrible joke?
Yep.
Okay.
4:30 is Liverpool versus Tottenham. Did you just mishear it just to do the joke?
I thought you said 2:30.
Okay.
And then I thought about the joke and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to throw that in there because our listeners will love that.
Another goal in Cardiff, Laura.
It's Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 2, and Neil Warnock side with all the momentum. Bag a second, Matt Pearson with a back post header. Cardiff didn't clear their lines and moving closer, Huddersfield, towards championship survival. Cardiff 0, Huddersfield 2.
Great news for Huddersfield then in the south of Wales this afternoon. Lap 48 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku on the shores of the Caspian Sea. And there's a bit of squabbling going on as Oscar Piastri has now made an overtake on Nico Hulkenberg for 12th position. Max Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. 3 laps to go. Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race, 3/10 quicker than Sergio Perez. And they haven't yet pitted George Russell to try and score that extra point by setting the fastest lap. Alonso now sets the fastest lap of the race. So Alonso sets the fastest lap. They're all pushing right to the end to try and get the extra point that you get for setting the fastest lap of the race. So the gap at the moment, as it stands, would come down to 6 points between Perez and Verstappen in first and second. But with Verstappen having the advantage, but Perez winning the Grand Prix. Alonso's closed the gap down a little to Leclerc, but it's still 2.7 seconds. The rest of the top 10 are Sainz in 5th, Hamilton 6th. Yellow flag in the first sector, but that's cleared quite quickly, so nothing too dramatic there. Stroll is in 7th place, Russell 8th, Ocon 9th, Norris in 10th spot, but Norris will get shuffled up surely soon because Ocon has to pit again, or has to do his one and only pit stop of the Grand Prix, and he still hasn't. Alonso is trying to set the fastest lap of the race. Verstappen is trying to set the fastest lap of the race, so is Charles Leclerc. Meanwhile, there's an overtake for Alex Albon as he goes past Nico Hulkenberg, and Kevin Magnussen follows through, so Magnussen sweeps past as well. So Hulkenberg having run most of the race in the top 10. He started from the pit lane, Hulkenberg, so it was always going to be a tough ask for him. And eventually, he is now dropping down the order. Just having a look at George Russell, is it he that caused the yellow flag at the first corner? It is. Lost a couple of seconds, George Russell, because he went in very, very deep into turn 1. So we'll see whether he pits for a new set of tyres to try and set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, but a little bit of an error there. Right, Verstappen sets the fastest lap, but here comes Alonso out over the start-finish straight again. Does he set the fastest lap? He does indeed. So at the moment, the reason that point's important is because obviously all points are important, but it changes the gap at the front. At the moment, as it stands, Perez would bring the gap down to 6 points at the top of the championship, but if he got fastest lap, it would be down to 5. But if Verstappen got fastest lap, it would only be down to 7. But Mercedes are coming out with a new set of soft tyres for George Russell. He is far enough ahead of Esteban Ocon that he can afford to pit, which he does do now, put on a new set of tyres, retain his track position, which is only 8th place, to be honest, and then come out with an extra point if he's able to set the fastest lap. He picks up 4 points for finishing in 8th position, so an extra 1 is a decent chunk. It's looked a bit slow on the left front there for Russell, 3.7 seconds in the end, but he still should be able to get out on the circuit ahead of the other cars around him and go for the fastest lap of the race. Alonso's still going for the fastest lap though. Everybody's still pushing right to the end of this Azerbaijan Grand Prix. A Grand Prix that Perez ultimately, Sam Bird, has
dominated.
Dominated is a bit strong, isn't it?
But he has.
But been in control of.
He's, as Andrew said 20 minutes ago, even, okay, he did get a little bit handed the lead. Charles Leclerc radio?
And Winnie is getting gustier.
Leclerc being told to watch out for the wind. It's getting a bit gustier.
But even with the, okay, he got handed the lead with the safety car, but he was putting big pressure at that stage, coming back at Max Verstappen. Remember, he moved up from 3rd on the grid. He overtook Charles Leclerc for 2nd. He got about after Max Verstappen, put pressure on him, made Max Verstappen pit early because he was suffering with his deg. And today, on equal terms, just today, I'm not saying that this is going to be the pattern, but today he has beaten Max Verstappen on a level playing field, and that doesn't happen very often.
Happened 2 races ago in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Oh.
No, I know,
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
Over the last 5 years,
and Verstappen started further back down the grid for that race and things like that. There were some caveats.
This is a very rare occasion, and hats off to how well Sergio Perez has performed today, because how many times over the last 5-6 years can we legitimately say a teammate of Max Verstappen's has beaten him hands down with equal machinery?
Not very often. Not very often. So we are on the final lap of the Grand Prix. Sergio Perez is coming down towards the final corner of the race, through the left-hander at turn 16. Down the start-finish straight. Esteban Ocon is making his pit stop, starting the final lap. But here comes Perez. The checkered flag is waiting for Sergio Perez. Another brilliant drive, maybe the best drive of his Formula One career, and he is truly taking the championship fight to Max Verstappen. Perez wins again in Baku, beats Verstappen by 2 seconds, and takes the championship lead down to just 6 points. Verstappen still leads it, but Perez is closing in. Charles Leclerc is going to come across the line and finish in 3rd spot. Alonso's ended up less than a second back at the line. So maybe Alonso waited a little too late to start his final charge. Verstappen set the fastest lap of the race on that final lap, but George Russell is going quicker. At the moment, the gap won't come down to 6 points. It would come down to 7, but as I say, Russell is driving towards the line. Leclerc finishes 3rd, Alonso 4th. Carlos Sainz takes the checkered flag and finishes in 6th spot. It's 7th for Lance Stroll. Is Russell going to get the fastest lap of the race here? He should fairly comfortably, to be honest. And so Sergio Perez's lead at the top of the championship, Max Verstappen's lead at the top of the championship will have been chipped away to just 6 points ahead of his teammate. Here comes Russell through now. He finishes in 8th, and he does set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. So it's 5 points for Russell. 6 points then the gap between Verstappen in the lead of the championship and Sergio Perez in 2nd in the standings, after Perez wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with a really, really impressive drive. Here's his radio.
King of the streets.
Well done, guys. We dominated this weekend. Well done, guys. Well done. We just have to sort out the issues. We cannot have the issues like Melbourne. And we are in the fight, guys. Well done. What a job. And this one goes to Thibaut and his wife. He's still a big part of our team. Yes, guys. Well done. Vamos!
Awesome stuff.
So Sergio Perez taking the victory, Max Verstappen in 2nd, Charles Leclerc in 3rd. Really, really impressive day for Sergio Perez, and Steve, this kind of puts him really in the championship fight. You heard him say it on the radio there. If we don't have mistakes like in Melbourne, we're in this fight.
Yeah, he said we are in the fight. What he meant is I am in the fight, and he definitely is. 6 points. That's the gap between Verstappen and Perez at the top of the driver standings. Jack, Sam, Andrew, thank you all very much. We will bring you